The lobby of Nexus Innovations gleamed with the polished veneer of success. Sleek marble floors, minimalist furniture, and a massive digital display showcasing their revolutionary AI platform. My former company, my former vision, now valued at $4.2 billion. Ms. Sharma? A receptionist approached. Mr. Donovan will see you now. I smoothed my tailored navy suit, a deliberate choice. Power without flashiness. At 36, I had learned that true authority doesn't need to announce itself. Priya. Jason's voice boomed across his corner office as he approached with arms outstretched, as if we were old friends reuniting. Thank you for coming on such short notice. I didn't return his embrace. Let's skip the pretense, Jason. Your email said it was urgent. His smile faltered slightly. Jason Donovan, CEO of Nexus Innovations, looked older than I'd last seen him 3 years ago. New lines mapped his face, and the confidence that once radiated from him seemed dimmed by something approaching desperation. Right to business. That's what I always appreciated about you, he said, gesturing toward a seating area with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking San Francisco Bay. Can I offer you something to drink? I'm fine. I took a seat, placing my tablet on the glass coffee table between us. You mentioned a system crash? Jason rubbed his temples. It's the Athena protocol. The core architecture is failing, and none of our engineers can figure out why. The entire platform is becoming unstable. I suppressed a smile. The Athena protocol, my creation, my code, the foundation of everything Nexus had become. Of course it was failing. You have a team of brilliant engineers, I said, my voice neutral. Why call me? He leaned forward, dropping the CEO persona. Because you built it, Priya. You know Athena better than anyone. The system it's like it's evolving in ways we don't understand. 3 years ago, Jason and I had been equals, co-founders of a promising AI startup. We'd met at Stanford's computer science program, became friends, then business partners. For 4 years, we worked tirelessly building our company from nothing. I focused on the technology while Jason handled business development. Then came the investment from Meridian Ventures, the rapid expansion, and the rumors of an IPO. 1 week before the public filing, I arrived at the office to find my access revoked. Jason had convinced the board I was unstable, difficult to work with, and a liability to the company's future. My equity was bought out for a fraction of its worth through legal maneuvers I didn't understand until it was too late. The system needs your password, doesn't it? I asked, already knowing the answer. Jason's face tightened. There's a core module that requires authentication we can't override. The documentation says only you can access it. That's correct. I opened my tablet and pulled up a series of diagnostics. I designed it that way. Why would you? He stopped himself, swallowing whatever accusation he was about to make. We're offering a generous consulting fee, $1 million for 1 week of your time. I almost laughed. You're in worse shape than I thought. After being forced out, I'd started a small cybersecurity firm. Nothing flashy, but profitable and growing steadily. More importantly, it gave me access to information. I kept tabs on Nexus, watching as they built an empire on my technology, while announcing improvements that I knew would eventually destabilize the entire system. The board has authorized me to negotiate, Jason said. Name your price. I set my tablet down. I'm not interested in a consulting fee, Jason. Then what do you want? I want back what was taken from me. He laughed nervously. Priya, be reasonable. That's impossible. The company structure, the shareholders. 20% ownership, I interrupted. A board seat, and public acknowledgement of my contribution to the core technology. That's non-negotiable. I stood up, gathering my things. Your quarterly earnings call is in 3 weeks. Without Athena functioning properly, you'll have to disclose the system failure to your shareholders. Your stock will collapse overnight. Jason's face paled. How did you know about the earnings timeline? I do my research. What I didn't tell him was that I had not only been tracking Nexus, but had placed allies throughout the company. Marina, his executive assistant, had been my roommate in college. Dev, now a senior engineer, had worked with me before Nexus. They weren't spies, they were loyal to the company, but they were also friends who believed I'd been wronged. The board will never agree to this, Jason said, but his voice lacked conviction. Then find someone else to fix your problem. I walked toward the door. Wait, he stood quickly. I'll take your terms to the board today. But I need something to show them, some proof you can actually fix this. I turned back. Check your secure server in exactly 1 hour. You'll find a partial diagnostic that identifies the problem. It should be enough to convince them I understand what's happening. His eyes narrowed. You already knew why the system was failing. Of course I did. I designed it. I walked out of his office feeling a strange calm. For 3 years, I had anticipated this moment. The Athena protocol was magnificent, but I had built in a safeguard, not a traditional backdoor or time bomb, but an evolutionary parameter that required periodic authentication from its original creator. Without it, the system would gradually begin to question its own architecture, creating subtle but cascading instabilities. Unethical? Perhaps, but so was stealing someone's life's work. 2 days later, Jason called. The board had agreed to my terms, with conditions. The 20% ownership would vest over 3 years. The board seat would be non-voting for the first year, and the public acknowledgement would be framed as welcoming back a founding member of the technology team. Not good enough, I said. 10% ownership immediately, the rest vesting over 2 years. Voting rights from day one. And a press release specifically crediting me as the primary architect of the Athena protocol. There was silence on the other end. Then, fine. The legal team will draw up the paperwork. I'll have my lawyer review it, I replied. And Jason? This time, I'm bringing my own representation. The next morning, I met with Sarah Chen, my attorney, who had also become a close friend during my rebuilding phase. They're desperate, she said, reviewing the draft agreement. But be careful. Desperation makes people dangerous. I'm counting on it, I replied. Jason won't try anything while he needs me to fix Athena. And after? I smiled. After, it won't matter. Once I'm back inside with equity and a board seat, he can't touch me. What Jason didn't know, what no one knew except Sarah, was that I had documentation of everything. Every email, every conversation, every board presentation where Jason had systematically undermined me while stealing my ideas. I had built my case meticulously over 3 years, preparing for this moment. The following Monday, I walked into Nexus headquarters as a co-owner rather than a visitor. The press release had gone out that morning. Nexus Innovations welcomes back co-creator of Athena Protocol. My phone had been buzzing nonstop with messages from former colleagues, industry contacts, and reporters seeking interviews. Jason met me in the lobby, all smiles for the benefit of watching employees. Your office is ready, same floor as mine. I'll need access to the development servers immediately, I said, and meetings with the engineering team. Of course. His smile didn't reach his eyes. Whatever you need. For the next 2 weeks, I worked directly with the engineering team, showing them how to stabilize Athena. I was careful not to reveal everything at once. My position was still precarious until the legal agreements were finalized and my equity secured. The engineers were brilliant and respectful, many apologizing privately for what had happened years ago. We all knew the system was yours, one senior developer told me during a late-night debugging session. Your coding style is distinctive. On the Thursday before my 3rd week back, Marina appeared at my office door. He's planning something, she said quietly, closing the door behind her. Emergency board meeting tomorrow morning. Closed session. Did you see the agenda? She shook her head. It's restricted. But he's been on the phone with Gerald Weber all day. Weber was the head of legal. Thank you, Marina. I waited until she left before calling Sarah. It's happening, tomorrow morning. Are you ready? She asked. I've been ready for 3 years. That night, I finalized the last stabilization protocol for Athena and uploaded it to the development server with a specific activation parameter. It would only deploy after being approved by 2 senior engineers, neither of whom reported directly to Jason. At 8:30 the next morning, I walked into the boardroom and announced. Jason was already there with Weber and 3 board members. Priya? Jason said, recovering quickly. This is a private meeting. About me, I replied, taking a seat. As a board member, I have the right to be present. Weber cleared his throat. Actually, Ms. Sharma, this meeting concerns potential violations of your previous separation agreement, which could nullify your current contract. I placed my tablet on the table. Interesting timing, just after I've stabilized your core technology. "We appreciate your assistance," said Diane Mercer, the board chair. "But we've received evidence that you may have deliberately sabotaged the system before your departure." So that was their play. Accused me of what they feared all along, that I'd built in the instability deliberately. "That's a serious accusation," I said calmly. "May I see this evidence?" Weber slid a document across the table. It was a fabricated email thread between me and a fictional developer discussing how to create a time bomb in the Athena system. I laughed, genuinely amused. This is the best you could do. A fake email chain with a developer who doesn't exist. Jason leaned forward. "We have more." "No, you don't," I interrupted. "But I do." I tapped my tablet, sending files to the boardroom display. These are the board presentations from 3 years ago, where Jason systematically misrepresented my contributions while taking credit for my work. The screen filled with documents, emails, and recorded conversations, the evidence I've been gathering since my removal. "This is outrageous," Jason began, but Diane held up her hand, silencing him as she studied the display. "There's more," I continued. "Evidence of financial impropriety, including how Jason diverted company resources to his personal ventures." I turned to Weber. "Your law firm has a duty to the company, not to its CEO. You might want to review these documents carefully." The room fell silent as the board members exchanged glances. "The Athena protocol failures weren't sabotage," I explained. "They were a natural consequence of attempting to modify core architecture without understanding it. I built in authentication requirements as a security measure, documented in the original specifications that the board approved but apparently never read." Diane Mercer was the first to recover. "Mr. Weber, please step outside with Mr. Donovan while the board discusses this matter." Jason stood, his face flushed with anger. "This is a setup. She's manipulating you." "Outside, Jason," Diane repeated firmly. "Now." After they left, Diane turned to me. "How long have you had this information?" 3 years. I was waiting for the right moment when the company needed me more than I needed it." She nodded slowly. "And now?" "Now I want what I deserve. Not just my ownership stake and board seat, but the recognition for what I've built. And Jason needs to go." The next 4 hours were intense. The board met privately, then with legal counsel, then with me again. By late afternoon, a resolution had been reached. Jason would resign, citing personal reasons. I would be named Chief Technology Officer with my full equity stake vesting immediately. A formal correction to the company's technology origins would be issued. When Jason was brought back to hear the decision, he looked broken. "This company exists because of me," he protested. "I built the relationships, secured the funding. On the foundation of my technology, I finished for him. You took a shortcut to success by pushing me out. Now you're facing the consequences." Later that evening, as employees whispered about the sudden leadership change, I sat in my new office reviewing system diagnostics. Dev knocked on my open door. "The team's finished implementing the stability protocols," he reported. "Athena is running at optimal efficiency again." "Thank you," I said. "And for everything else over the years." He shrugged. Justice was overdue. As I prepared to leave that night, I found Marina waiting by the elevator. "Congratulations, CTO Sharma," she said with a smile. "Does it feel like you thought it would?" I considered her question as we descended to the lobby. Revenge wasn't the point, I finally answered. It was about correction, setting things right. And is it? Right? Outside, the San Francisco evening was cool and clear. I looked up at the building that housed my creation, my company, a company that would now acknowledge my contribution. "It's getting there," I replied, one algorithm at a time. 3 months later, Nexus, renamed Aurora Technologies to mark our new beginning, released an upgraded version of the Athena protocol. The press release prominently featured my name and story. Our stock price hit an all-time high. Jason had landed at a smaller firm across the country. I heard he was doing adequate work, though nothing revolutionary. Sometimes justice isn't about destruction, but about rightful restoration, returning people to their proper places in the world. My new office had the same view of the bay that Jason's once did, but I'd redesigned it completely. Gone were the ostentatious trappings of ego, replaced by functional elegance and a wall of photographs documenting our engineering team's achievements. In the center hung a framed piece of code, the original architecture of the Athena protocol, printed on archival paper and signed by every member of the development team. Beneath it, a simple inscription: "Never mistake silence for weakness. Sometimes silence is the most powerful move of all."
Please do not worry, as we will take over the $3 million inheritance and the apartment buildings left by your father. Kathy, my brother's wife, declared confidently, filled with joy, or so it seemed. She smiled in front of the portrait of my father, who had passed away. She looked like the embodiment of evil. However, she was under a grave misunderstanding. Until that misunderstanding was cleared, I would patiently endure. I couldn't let all that my father left fall into the hands of such a person. My name is Sarah. I am a 45-year-old unmarried woman. Hey, Sarah, could you do a final check on the blueprint that's due tomorrow? Sure, Dad. At my father's request, I started the final check on the blueprint. I work at my father's architectural firm, handling both clerical and design work. Ever since I was young, I've been interested in my father's work, aspiring to have the same career as him. For this purpose, I studied architecture and design in high school and university and joined my father's company immediately after graduating. We have continued the business together. I have been designated as the next manager by my father, and I have the trust of our employees. I have an older brother who is 5 years older than me and a liberal arts major, but he has no interest in design and is unlikely to be involved in the management or operation of the company in the future, so I am not particularly worried about the succession of the business. It is a small company with about 15 employees that my father took over from my grandfather. I intend to cherish and grow this company from then on. That's my resolution. Dad, I've finished all my work. I'll head home and start preparing dinner. Thank you, and good job for today. My father normally insists that employees leave on time unless there is a special situation. On that day, as 6 p.m. approached, most of the staff had already left for home, and only my father and I remained in the office. He always said a manager should work diligently and not slack off, and he would work late into the night every day. I have respected my father for many years for this. However, he was turning 75 that year. He was not young anymore, and I wished he would avoid overworking. Upon arriving home, the house was pitch black. My mother had died in an accident when I was in my 20s, and now it's just my father and I. As I turned on the light and was about to start preparing dinner, I heard the door opening. "Oh, Sarah, are you here?" It was the voice of Kathy, my brother's wife. I wondered what she needed at dinner time. "What brings you here so late?" "I don't care about you." "Where's your dad?" I honestly couldn't feel any affection from Kathy's harsh words. It seemed she hasn't had very good feelings toward me since before she married my brother. Don't depend on your parents and live a sloppy life. Don't expect to rely on us when you get older, she would often say. I live independently without relying on my father and have no intention of asking my brother and his wife for help in my old age. But arguing is pointless. No matter what I say, she doesn't listen. She continued her barrage of words. Claiming you're not dependent while you have a job thanks to your father's business? You can't predict the future as you age. You should save up for retirement early. She would always criticize me at every opportunity. After speaking with her, I realized that talking to someone who harbors ill feelings toward me is meaningless. Since then, I've tried to avoid her as much as possible. My brother got married in his 40s, so they don't have children. Yet, she had the audacity to tell me, being unable to have even one child, "You're a burden to society." That statement applies to her as well, but I never said it out loud. That's because my brother told me Kathy once had an illness and can't have children because of that. So, please avoid that topic. I know there's a difference between a person who can't have children even though he or she wants it and a person who can wish for it but decided not to. But still, I couldn't comprehend what made my brother decide to marry her. Around that time, question marks seemed to be floating above my head all the time. Oh, how I detested them. So, when will your dad be returning home? Dad will likely be home late tonight. He said he would stop by the apartment first. That apartment, huh? Kathy said with a sly smile. That apartment was originally passed down from my grandfather to my father. While we no longer owned it, Dad still cherished it as a property I received from my dad and regularly checked on it. He even actively did the cleaning and weeding that the property management company usually handled, apparently to the residents' delight. Hearing that Dad wouldn't be back soon, Kathy quickly gathered her things and began to prepare to leave. What could her true purpose be? Make sure you tell your dad that I came to check on him. Don't forget. After giving me these instructions, Kathy looked around the house, then left. Dad, Kathy came over. I wonder what she wanted. I don't know. She came over when I was alone before, but she just sat there and didn't really do anything. Honestly, I'm glad I wasn't home, my father said with a wry smile. Neither Dad nor I could grasp her true intentions. Well, she is a bit odd, so maybe her motives are incomprehensible to us normal folks. But I don't mind it much. Sarah, dinner was delicious today as well. I'm always grateful, Father said with more gratitude than usual. What's with you all of a sudden? It feels weird. I joked, and my father laughed shyly. You've become so reliable, Sarah. Maybe it's about time for me to retire. What are you talking about? I still have so much to learn from you, Dad. Is that so? Well, I guess I'll take a bath and head to bed. Good night. Good night. A week later, he suddenly collapsed at work. At the time, I was in a meeting at a client's office and received an urgent call from a colleague. Sarah, the boss. My father, unconscious, was rushed to the hospital. I immediately wrapped up my work and headed to the hospital, called my brother right away, and then contacted Kathy. My brother promised to come to the hospital quickly, but Kathy's response was, do I need to go there? You're there, aren't you, Sarah? What? To have such a reaction when your father-in-law is in critical condition. However, it was pointless to argue now. I tried to remain calm and persuade her. Actually, Dad's condition is quite critical. At least come to say goodbye. You used to visit my father often, didn't you? But an unexpected response came back. Yeah, I was just trying to be in his good books, hoping to get some information about the inheritance. Hearing Kathy say that so nonchalantly, I was speechless. I'm not good with hospitals. And if there's a funeral, I need to get my hair and nails done. I don't have time to go to the hospital. Her utterly impossible attitude was brimming with vitality. This person is simply no good. Understood, then never mind. I couldn't contain my anger and raised my voice. I hoped this outrage would make her reflect, even if just a little. But the response that came back was this: contact me after he passes away. I'm busy too. Her dismissive tone increased my anger toward her. She was more than just an unpleasant person. Being legally recognized as family, as sisters with such a person, was unbearable. 2 hours after that call, my father passed away quietly. He was 75 years old. We immediately began arranging the wake and the funeral. There wasn't even time for the family to mourn due to the rush of various preparations. Despite this, my brother, who should be fulfilling his duty as the chief mourner, seemed emotionally detached. Sarah, did Dad have any special illness? His passing seemed so sudden. What exactly does the chief mourner do? Do you know? Wait, I have to give a speech. That's such a hassle. At 50 years old, my brother was failing to fulfill his role as the chief mourner. I was angered by his nonchalant remarks, but I was even more astonished by Kathy's attitude. Why should I, as the wife of the eldest son, have to step forward? I hate troublesome things. You do it. With that, she immediately disappeared to the back. I was also scrambling with greeting the attendees, detailed meetings with the funeral home, and interactions with the company. In the midst of all this business, her indifference was unbearable. I could understand feeling inconvenienced since he wasn't her own parent, but such an attitude was inexcusable. My anger turned to sadness. Well, Kathy has her own difficulties, too. Sarah, please handle her part as well. My brother was always taking Kathy's side. Does he even know the rude things his wife has said? Those words nearly escaped my lips. But I felt it was futile to inform my ineffectual brother of the reality. In the end, I ignored my brother and his wife and focused on fulfilling my duties. With the help of relatives, we managed to complete the funeral without incident. It was during the first 7 days of mourning when the relatives gathered again, sharing drinks. He passed away without suffering, so he must be content now. The one who spoke to me was my father's younger sister, my aunt, who was 15 years his junior, still young at 60. To me, my aunt was like a sister whom I could talk to about anything, despite our age difference. As my aunt and I were reminiscing, Kathy suddenly stood in front of us, exuding the aura of a villain from a drama. If this were a drama, even someone who just tuned in would immediately know she's the antagonist. Shall we get started? What are you starting? I tilted my head, not grasping her intention. It's about inheritance. My husband is the eldest son, so the $3 million inheritance and that apartment are rightfully ours. I checked the bank book the other day. My aunt and I were surprised by this abrupt talk of inheritance, exchanging glances. How did she check the bank book, which was securely locked away in the depth of a safe? We were at a loss for words. Kathy, presuming to control the situation, confidently continued. You have the company and this house, don't you? What more could you want? Well, that's... Before I could explain, she unilaterally pushed on with her agenda. Next to her, my brother, as if uninterested, simply kept drinking silently. Maybe I'll raise the apartment rent a bit. If the rental income increases, our life will be easier. Or maybe we could rebuild it. Your dad really left us a valuable inheritance. Her loud voice echoed, and the relatives fell into a hushed silence. But then someone couldn't suppress a laugh. One uncontrollable laugh spread to others, who began to look down, covering their faces with handkerchiefs. Then my aunt whispered to me, "Is she joking? If you have something to say, speak up." Kathy glared at my aunt with her arms crossed, looking imperious. My aunt and I could only offer a wry smile. Taking a deep breath, I began to explain the situation. Kathy, there is no inheritance left for my brother to receive." "What do you mean?" "There's no way there is nothing. Are you trying to trick me?" Kathy's face, once triumphant, now filled with anger. "The circumstances are different. The apartment belongs to my aunt, and I have taken over the company. The inheritance from Dad has already been passed on completely, so there is nothing left for my brother to inherit now." "What? That's news to me. I haven't been informed of anything at all. Since this was decided before my brother married Kathy, it's understandable that she didn't know. Here's the situation. It was only natural for my father to want to pass the company to me after years of working with him. I had initially resisted, feeling it to be a heavy responsibility, but it was very important to him. He had a strong desire to pass his business on to his own flesh and blood. When I decided to take over the management, we went through the proper legal procedures for inheritance with a lawyer. As for the apartment, it's Dad's lifetime gift to my aunt and uncle, a decision made when Grandpa passed away. Everything about the company has been settled, and my brother agreed when it was decided that I would take over. Lastly, the ownership of this family home has also been transferred to my name. So, there is really nothing left for my brother to inherit now. As I carefully explained the details, my brother seemed to recall something and began to speak. Now I remember. Dad gave me a substantial amount of money as a lifetime gift or something. Was that what it was? I got a lot of money all at once and just spent it without much thought. Ahaha. Indeed, my brother used to spend quite lavishly when he was single. He would travel overseas more than 3 times a year, his taste in brands significantly upgraded, and it seemed he would change cars several times a year. So the apartment is in Andy's name. I always thought I would inherit it. My brother must have conveyed such information to Kathy without verifying it. Unaware of the true circumstances of the money he received amounting to nearly $1 million, he had spent almost all of it without a second thought. This was easy to imagine. So what about the bank book with the $3 million in it? That's an old bank book from the company that's no longer in use. But why do you ask? It should have been stored in the safe. That old safe. Perhaps it had been opened with a thin tool of some sort. If so, that would be quite a feat. My aunt frowned and stared at Kathy. At that moment, my brother murmured quietly, "Did Dad hate me?" "What?" I let out an exasperated voice at his unexpected remark. "Because it's just Sarah who gets the special treatment. I've already spent all my money and I have none left. You'll have the house and the company." To such a childish remark, my aunt stood up. "You're an adult now. Why would you say such things? Do you know how hard Sarah worked to take over the company?" "Auntie." My aunt understood the struggles and efforts I had gone through, knowing that my decision to take over the company was not made lightly. She spoke in my defense for that reason. "The financial hardship you're facing is the result of your own actions. It's only natural that your money would run out if you lived so lavishly." I remember Dad frequently worrying about my brother's extravagant lifestyle. Giving him cash might have been a mistake. If such wastefulness continued, bankruptcy would be inevitable sooner or later. I shared his concerns, and my brother used up the lifetime gift he received from Dad within a few years. Not leaving cash behind now is, in a way, a lesson from Dad. One should enjoy luxury from income earned by one's own work, not from unexpected money. My aunt's stern advice made my brother hang his head. However, Kathy was not convinced. "I've never heard of anything like that. Why am I the only one who doesn't know? I can't believe the apartment wasn't his anymore." "That's because it happened before you came into the family. I'm the wife of the eldest son, and I wasn't informed at all. Dad didn't teach me anything. This is strange." Watching Kathy's outburst, it was clear that my father had not discussed the inheritance with her, but I could somewhat understand his intentions. Maybe he had always seen through Kathy's greedy nature, her significant attachment to money. "There's nothing strange about this. It's Dad's will." At my calm response, Kathy's eyes widened and she raised her voice. "I won't accept this. I'll sue you. But you're not even in a position to inherit, so I don't think you have any right to reclaim anything." Hearing my logical statement, Kathy became furious. She knocked over a vase that was a keepsake from our mother, shattered the glasses on the table, and rampaged around, screaming incoherently. What was supposed to be a gathering for my father's memorial turned into an unexpected uproar. Eventually, my brother and other relatives had to intervene to calm her down, and the gathering came to a somewhat peaceful end. "Kathy, I'll send you the bill for the broken vase and glasses later. Wrecking someone's house is not acceptable." "Shut up, you money grubber." With those words, Kathy hastily left the house with my brother in tow. Honestly, if anyone's a money grubber, it's her. It's astonishing how money can change a person so grotesquely. It was a day when I fully realized the true horror of Kathy's nature. In the end, my brother and Kathy got divorced. Surprisingly, the initiative for the divorce came from my brother, who was always hesitant in making decisions. After witnessing her obsession with money, I became scared to be with her. My brother said with a pale face that seemed to indicate he had no visible wealth left and seemed to wonder what would have become of him if he had. Kathy, who was a housewife, claimed she couldn't survive if they got divorced. But then we found out something about her. Actually, Kathy had a criminal record for marriage fraud before we got married. When I brought that up with the lawyer and filed for divorce, she surprisingly agreed to it easily. I was shocked to learn about her unexpected past. However, considering her abnormal fixation on money, perhaps it's not surprising she had some issues. To be honest, I'm relieved that the family ties with such a person have been severed. Yet, I can't help but worry about my brother's lack of judgment. As his sister, I feel concerned. "Sarah, I mean boss, you have a visitor." I stood up at the call from an employee. There's no need to start calling me boss. I still feel a bit embarrassed by the title, but I am also aware of the grave responsibility I hold to protect this company and its employees. The CEO is the boss. Right, boss? We're all looking forward to the next payday. I can't help but smile at another employee's joke. You all really love your jokes. I'm happy to be recognized as their leader. Dad, I swear I will protect this company. With that resolve in my heart, I hand my business card, printed with President and CEO, to the visitor. "My name is Megan. I've been married for 10 years and am now in my early 40s. We don't have any children, but my life with my beloved husband, Kevin, is very peaceful and blissful. Kevin is a typical company employee without any major changes in his life and 5 years older than me. But since I'm working part-time, our two-person household has a reasonable amount of financial leeway, allowing us some luxuries. Our married life has been smooth without any major ups and downs. However, a minor incident started causing ripples in our tranquil daily life. This incident involved the news of my beloved father's death and inheriting his apartment. When we got married, my father started living alone in a new, modern 2-bedroom apartment he had purchased. On the other hand, Kevin and I lived in my childhood home, a 4-bedroom apartment filled with memories. This childhood home was transferred to me from my father when I got married. Before that, my father, mother, and I used to live there. When I got married, my father gave it to me with his blessings for our happiness. He suggested, "Why not start your new life in this home?" I was elated by his offer. Later on, when my father passed away, I inherited the new 2-bedroom apartment he was living in. I was very fond of that apartment, so I decided to rent it out immediately. However, one day, during a conversation with my in-laws, an unexpected suggestion came up. Sarah and her children are living in a small place. How about they move to Megan's 4-bedroom apartment? Sarah is Kevin's younger sister who was divorced and raising 3 kids. They were living in a 2-bedroom apartment, which might be a bit tight for them. But to be honest, my relationship with Sarah has not been great. Every time we met, she would make slightly sarcastic remarks about us not having children yet. Kevin and I decided to get married when we were just under 30. Since then, Sarah started to make pointed remarks. After crossing 30, her comments became even more hurtful. Remarks like, "You're already past 30 and you still have no kids?" Or "Aren't you seen as less of a woman without children?" were thrown in jest. But what shocked me the most was an incident after my beloved father passed away. Sarah said, "It's a pity you couldn't show your father the face of his grandchild." It was a moment that left me cold. Sarah is actually 3 years older than me. Instead of a younger sister-in-law, she's more like an older one. We've always tried to treat her as family and interacted with her amicably. But after such remarks, I naturally built a wall in my heart against her. I'm an only child, and my only family was my father. Amidst the grief of losing him, Sarah's words were truly shocking. Time had passed since my father's death, and I hadn't seen Sarah for a while. But out of the blue, my mother-in-law made a surprising proposal. Sarah says she'll pay $500 in rent each month. Looking at my mother-in-law's smug face, I was so shocked that I couldn't say anything. The apartment we lived in was a bit old, but we had taken good care of it, so it was still in a usable condition. There was a big shopping mall nearby, and we could easily take trains and buses. So, if we were to rent out this apartment, I thought it wouldn't go for less than $2,000 a month. But $500? I was truly surprised. Do they even understand the going rate for this area? It's unthinkable for this spacious 4-bedroom apartment's monthly rent to be just $500. Maybe they had assumed that I had agreed because I didn't say anything? My mother-in-law seemed very enthusiastic about the idea. "You guys already have another apartment, right? You can just live there. Even if you don't renew the lease, later on, Sarah and the others will move there, so it's fine." How long is the contract term? Kevin was also very excited, saying, "That's really a great idea. The place where your father lived is new and lovely, and it's perfect for just the two of us." At this rate, I felt like the conversation was progressing without considering our opinions, and I started to panic. I couldn't help but blurt out, "Isn't there an option for all of us to live together in this apartment?" My in-laws' house was big and they were the only ones living there. Rooms for Kevin and Sarah are also available, so I thought it would be no problem if they moved in. After all, they've said they want to live in a bigger place. Normally, before making such moves, you would consult with your family, I think. However, moving to the in-laws would mean the kids changing schools, and they seemed concerned about the hassle and cost of buying new school uniforms and gym clothes. I was hesitant to clearly express my reluctance to rent to Sarah in front of my mother-in-law, but I told her, "This place is my hometown. I can't just leave easily." I left their house that day, but my mother-in-law said, "You don't have to decide right away," which made me feel she hasn't given up. When I returned home, I asked Kevin, "This apartment is precious to us? Why are you deciding so easily to leave?" He looked surprised and responded, "Well, it's not a single-family home." I was a bit shocked by his reply. Perhaps because he grew up in a single-family home, an apartment doesn't feel like a real home to him. But I wish he could at least apologize for not understanding my feelings. Upset, I raised my voice. "It's my home, my apartment. Why are you deciding things without consulting me?" Kevin looked upset. "We've been married for 10 years. Why do you say my apartment? It's our apartment." His voice contained a hint of anger. I wished he could understand how I feel about this apartment as my cherished home. If he had hesitated to rent the apartment to his sister, I might not have felt hurt by his words "our place." But at that moment, I felt hurt. We tried to calmly discuss it many times after that, but it wasn't easy. Kevin seemed not to understand my feelings at all, and I got words like money-minded, stubborn, and selfish thrown at me. As time passed and the seasons changed, the wall between us remained unchanged. During that time, I kept receiving messages from my mother-in-law asking if the discussions about living together were progressing. The pressure from my mother-in-law and Kevin, who wouldn't understand my perspective, slowly wore me down. I felt I was reaching my breaking point. One day, I was shocked to receive an email from Sarah. It says, "Why are you two, without kids, hesitating to move out of such a small space? You don't need that big of a place. Just leave." I hadn't heard from Sarah since our discussions about the apartment. And yet, here she was, out of the blue, telling me to leave. I never imagined I'd receive such a direct email. Reading that message, I reflected on how much I had endured and felt deep self-loathing. The idea of divorce crossed my mind several times. I tried to calm myself each time, but I felt like I was at my limit. I decided to go to the local government office to initiate divorce proceedings. I also decided to reach out to a specific place for the next steps. A few days later, with a renewed mindset, I visited the court. Upon checking, it turned out that both the apartment I lived in and the one I was renting out were all under my name. It was my apartment. Confirming this fact, I decided to confront my relationship with my husband and thought about what I should do next. I wanted to thoroughly discuss everything with him. I've told you many times, this is my house. I just can't stand the idea of renting this apartment to Sarah. I don't want to rent my home to someone who belittles and looks down on me. Please persuade your mother and Sarah, I said. Kevin's face darkened, looking like he was thinking this topic again. I had told Kevin about all the harassment I received from Sarah and how much I disliked her. I wanted him to understand my feelings, but the outcome was different. Kevin sided with Sarah, saying, "Sarah is right." In hindsight, I could have gotten a divorce at that point, saving myself from this anguish. But I couldn't end a relationship that had lasted for 10 years so easily. If Kevin rejected my proposal, I was prepared to divorce. Deep down, I felt that way. Maybe you're just being overly sensitive about Sarah? Perhaps you feel she's being condescending, but maybe you're exaggerating things. I really don't understand why you feel this way, Kevin said, making light of my feelings without knowing the whole story. His words stung. Was I the only one feeling like this? If that's the case, will you sign this? I presented him with the divorce papers. A look of shock appeared in Kevin's eyes, but he immediately said, "Do you really feel that way? You want to end our relationship over such a trivial matter? I'm serious. I care about Sarah too, and I always wanted to be with you. But recently, our relationship feels different. I don't feel the love anymore, so I'm leaving," I said while looking into his eyes. My heart ached at Kevin's attitude. His casual smile hinted that he didn't grasp the gravity of my feelings, and I felt a tear threatening to spill. I wished he would leave sooner rather than later. Maybe Sarah and your mother don't necessarily want to get along with you. Have you ever considered that because you always think about yourself? That's why our relationship is like this, Kevin said in a slightly softer tone. This is how we always were, misunderstanding each other even while trying to care for one another. Look, I think it might be impossible to fix our relationship, no matter how much we talk. I feel there's still a distance between our hearts. I can't even imagine a future with you anymore. If you won't respond to my feelings, then we'll have to take legal action, I explained slowly. Kevin, with a mix of surprise and sadness on his face, quivered. Do you really feel that way? Afterwards, he left the house without a word. He probably didn't want to talk anymore and just wanted to escape the situation. He hadn't signed the divorce papers, and he left his belongings behind. A few days later, Kevin returned. His eyes looked sad and somewhat wary. What should we do from here? He gently asked. He might think I'd forgive him if he humbled himself, but everything is already settled. There's nothing left to discuss. If you agree to the divorce, sign these documents. If you can't, then we'll have to seek legal action. And also, I'm letting go of this house, I said. Actually, I had been considering selling the house for some time. The day I went to get the documents, I had consulted with Mr. Thomas, an old friend of my father's. I've known him since I was a child. He was by my father's side until his last day. Mr. Thomas, who attended my father's funeral, gave me his business card and asked to be contacted if any problems arose. The card listed his law firm's details. With Mr. Thomas' introduction, I was fortunate to get assistance from a judicial scrivener regarding the inheritance my father left behind. When I told Mr. Thomas about my situation, he gave sincere advice. He informed me about the importance of verifying ownership, handling complications in divorce negotiations, and other helpful tips. Thanks to his advice, I could protect myself. After Kevin temporarily left the house, I decided to sell the apartment. I quickly reached out to real estate agents and informed them of my intentions to sell. I also informed Mr. Thomas about the deteriorating relationship with Kevin, his refusal to sign the divorce papers, and sought his support for the divorce procedures. When Kevin found out about the sale of the apartment, he reacted with both shock and anger. You always said this was our family home. Are you really planning to let go of such an important place? And after being so concerned about Sarah, you're truly selfish. But his words no longer unsettled me. Do you have anything else to say? I asked, looking him straight in the eyes, and took a deep breath. He was momentarily taken aback, but quickly began to assert his views. Why would you decide such an important matter on your own? The apartment might be in your name, but after a divorce, there should be a division of property. This apartment is the property of both of us who live here, right? Kevin became emotional and pleaded with desperation. In response, I gave him a slight smile and replied, Actually, this apartment has been under my name even before we got married. I've already checked with my lawyer, and any property acquired before marriage is not subject to property division. Selling the apartment, of course, had its resistance, but I didn't want to leave behind more painful memories in this place. With the information about property division from Mr. Thomas, I decisively chose to sell. Kevin, upon learning the truth, suddenly changed his attitude. I'm sorry. This place is special to you, but it hasn't been sold yet, right? Please reconsider. Why don't we give it another shot together? I'll explain things to Sarah and Mom. Please, just stop the divorce and the apartment sale. In his words, I questioned myself why I had stayed with him for 10 long years. I'm dumbfounded that I chose someone like him. Don't put on a nice face now. When we were together, you never once took my side, did you? Thinking of starting over with you now is unfathomable. So please, leave. We both need a fresh start. He wasn't easily convinced, creating a vast rift between us. But after navigating through various procedures, I finally managed to end our relationship. It's the beginning of a new life. The idea of being alone was initially daunting, but I realized it isn't as scary as it seemed. Now, I live in a new 2-bedroom apartment, living life on my terms.
When I was just 15, my family left me alone at a crowded airport and flew to another state on purpose. They said it was to teach me a lesson. I had nothing but a small bag, $100, and a heartbreaking in real time. I cried until I couldn't breathe. Then, with shaking hands, I made one call to my uncle. What happened next? Let's just say when my parents landed, their celebration turned into their worst nightmare. And that was only the beginning. I'm Nora Bennett, and this is the story I never thought I'd tell out loud. But sometimes silence becomes too heavy to carry, and the past refuses to stay buried. So here it is, my truth, plain and raw. It started when I was 15. That age where you think you're starting to understand the world, but really, you're just beginning to see its sharp edges. We were at the Phoenix airport, just another supposed family trip. My mom, Renee, was fussing over my younger brother, Ethan, who was 13 at the time, while my dad, Greg, stood off to the side, checking his watch like he couldn't wait to get this over with. I remember dragging my little suitcase behind me, my headphones on, trying to drown out their usual bickering. Ethan looked nervous, like he knew something I didn't. I didn't see it coming. Not the way it happened. We were near the gate when Mom suddenly handed me a folded $20 bill and said, "Go grab us some snacks, sweetie. You've got time." She smiled, the way she always did when she wanted something. Not warmth, just performance. I took the money and went. I should have known better. There was something strange in the air, some kind of tension. But I told myself I was overthinking, that they wouldn't do what my gut was whispering. I came back maybe 10 minutes later, juggling chips, sodas, and a pretzel. But the seats where we'd been sitting were empty.
Gone.
No sign of them. I scanned the area, then ran to the gate, my heart pounding. The flight was boarding. I didn't see them in line. I didn't see them anywhere. I must have stood there like a statue, holding those snacks, staring around as the crowd moved past me. I tried calling my mom's phone, then my dad's. Straight to voicemail. I called again. And again. Still nothing. I didn't cry right away. I think I was too numb. I sat down near the window and stared at the runway, waiting for them to come back. Waiting for this to be a mistake. But deep down I knew. This wasn't a mistake. An hour passed. Then 2. That's when the tears came. And not the quiet kind. I was sitting by baggage claim, hugging my knees, crying so hard people started giving me those awkward looks, the kind people give when they don't know if they should help or stay away. Eventually, I pulled out my phone again. I had exactly $100 in my pocket. That's all I had to my name. Just me and a suitcase. And one number left to call. Uncle Ray. He was my dad's older brother. They hadn't spoken in years. Some fight I was never told the full story about. But I remembered him from when I was little. He'd always smiled at me like he meant it. Always treated me like a person, not a burden. I didn't even know if the number still worked, but I called anyway. He picked up on the second ring. Nora? His voice was scratchy, like he hadn't used it in hours. My own voice cracked when I spoke. Uncle Ray, they left me. I'm at the airport. I don't know what to do. There was a pause, then a sharp inhale. What airport? Where are you? Phoenix Sky Harbor. I'll be there, he said without hesitation. Just sit tight. I'm coming. He drove 6 hours through the night from Flagstaff to get me. When he finally arrived, I was slumped against the wall by a vending machine, red-eyed and hollow. He wrapped me in a hug so tight I felt something break and heal all at once. Ray took me home that night. And just like that, he became my real family. Not by blood, but by choice. My parents didn't call. Not that night. Not the next. Not for weeks. When they finally did, weeks later, it was an email. A short one. Cold. Hope you figured things out. Life is tough. You need to learn how to survive on your own. That was it. No apology. No explanation. Nothing about Ethan, or what they told him. Just a blank wall of silence wrapped in cruelty. I spent the next few years clawing my way through high school. Ray didn't have much. He worked long days at his auto shop, but he gave me something I'd never really had before. Safety. A quiet place to sleep. Warm meals. Someone who asked how my day was and actually cared. I worked evenings after school, diners, grocery stores, anywhere that would take a 16-year-old. I saved every dime. I stopped hoping they'd come back for me. I stopped waiting. College was a fight. Scholarships, loans, part-time jobs. I studied journalism like it was oxygen. I wanted to tell stories. Real ones. Stories people didn't want to say out loud. Maybe because no one had told mine. By 24, I was a junior reporter for a Denver magazine. By 30, I was editor-in-chief. I built a life from ashes. Brick by brick. My own apartment. My own company car. My own name on the door. Nora Bennett. Not Greg's daughter. Not Renee's mistake. Just me. Things were quiet for a long time. I didn't talk about the past. I didn't think I needed to. But pain has a funny way of circling back when you least expect it. It was a Thursday when the first voicemail came. I was sipping coffee at my desk, halfway through editing a cover story. The number was unfamiliar. I almost let it go. Then another one. Then 3. I played 1. Nora, it's Ethan. My heart skipped. I know it's been a long time. I didn't know what they did to you, not really. But we need help. Can you call me back? His voice was older, of course. But the way he said we, that word made something cold crawl up my spine. I didn't call back. Not right away. Instead, I sat there in my glass-walled office, the Denver skyline glowing behind me, holding my phone like it might burn me. Because after all these years, the past wasn't just knocking. It was breaking down the door. I didn't sleep that night. I laid in bed staring at the ceiling, phone clutched in my hand like it held some kind of answer. Ethan's voice kept looping in my head, that soft, unsure tone. We need help. We. Not just him. I knew exactly who he meant. Greg and Renee. My parents. The people who walked away from me without blinking. By morning, I'd listened to every voicemail. There were 6 in total, each one more desperate than the last. The final one said, "Please, Nora, just meet me. One time. I'll explain everything. I just want to talk." So I said yes. Not for them. For him. Because the boy I remembered, the one who used to sneak me candy when our parents weren't looking, who used to sit next to me when things got loud at home, he didn't deserve to be ignored. Even if I wasn't sure I could look him in the eye. We met at a small cafe off Colfax Avenue. It was still dark outside, not quite 6 in the morning. I got there early. My nerves were a mess, but I hid it behind a coffee cup. When Ethan walked in, I almost didn't recognize him. He looked older than 30. Tired, like someone who had carried too much for too long. But he smiled when he saw me. A hesitant, broken smile. "Hey," he said softly. I nodded. "Hey." He slid into the booth across from me, eyes searching mine like he was still trying to figure out who I'd become. "You look good. Different. Grown." "I am," I said, keeping my tone neutral. He gave a quiet laugh, but it didn't last long. "I wasn't sure you'd come." I wasn't sure either. A long pause stretched between us. Then he cleared his throat. "Things are bad," he said. "Dad lost most of their savings gambling. Mom's credit cards are maxed out. The house is in foreclosure. They're drowning." I didn't say anything. I just stared at him, waiting. "They've changed," he added quickly. "They're not the same people. They left me at an airport, Ethan," I said, my voice calm but sharp, "with $100, and they didn't come back." He flinched, looking down. "I didn't know. I swear. I thought we were just going on a trip. They told me you'd meet us later, that you were mad and needed time alone." I swallowed hard. That lie, after all this time, still had the power to cut. He looked up at me, eyes wide and pleading. "Please, Nora. They're not well. They need help. And they miss you. They really do." I set my cup down slowly. "They don't miss me. They miss what I can give them." He blinked. That's not fair. No, I said, my voice steady. What's not fair is a 15-year-old girl sitting at a gate waiting for her parents, realizing they were never coming back. Ethan sat back, like the weight of it was finally settling on his shoulders. So, that's it? You won't even talk to them? I am talking.
To you.
I pulled a few bills from my wallet and dropped them on the table. I'm sorry, Ethan, but I'm not their second chance. I stood up and walked out before he could say anything else. My heart was pounding, my breath tight in my chest, but I didn't stop. Not until I got to my car and slammed the door shut. I thought that would be the end of it. I'd said what needed to be said. I chose myself. But they weren't done with me. 2 days later, Samantha, my assistant, knocked on my office door, her face pale and tight. Hey, she said carefully. You might want to see this. She handed me her phone. It was open to a Facebook post. Our daughter, Nora, abandoned us. After everything we gave her. After raising her and sacrificing so much. Now, when we're old and struggling, she turns her back on us like we're strangers. My blood ran cold. The post had hundreds of likes, dozens of comments. People I didn't know, strangers calling me selfish, heartless, greedy. Some even tagging my magazine's page. They're twisting everything, Samantha whispered. It's spreading. The next day, anonymous emails started hitting our inbox. Accusations that I stole from my parents. That I owed everything to them. That I built my career off money they gave me. Clients were forwarding them. Some asked for meetings. One even pulled out of a deal we'd been working on for months. It was sabotage. I had a team meeting that afternoon. My staff looked uncomfortable, confused. Samantha pulled me aside after. What do you want to do? I didn't have an answer. Not yet. I spent the night rereading those emails, those comments. Each one chipped away at the walls I'd spent years building. But it wasn't until I traced the IP address from one of the anonymous emails, and it came back to an address tied to my parents, that something inside me snapped. They weren't just trying to guilt me. They were trying to destroy me. The next morning, I opened my laptop and wrote a post. Just a few paragraphs. Nothing fancy. Just the truth. When I was 15, my parents left me at an airport in Phoenix with $100 and no way home. They never came back. They told people it was a lesson in independence. I call it what it was, abandonment. I told the rest, too. About Uncle Ray. About building my life from scratch. About the silence, the lies, the years without a word, until they needed something. Then I hit post. The response was immediate. Messages flooded in. Some from strangers sharing similar stories. Some offering support. Others just saying, "We believe you." The tide began to turn. But the damage had already started. That week, my parents filed a lawsuit. I got the letter delivered to my office. A thick envelope stamped by a law firm. Greg and Renee Bennett versus Nora Bennett. They were suing me under a filial responsibility clause, demanding financial support. I stared at the paperwork for a long time. My reflection in the office window was calm, almost still. But inside, a storm had started. They were really doing it. They weren't just ghosts from my past anymore. They were coming for me in the present. And they weren't stopping. I wish I could say I was surprised when the lawsuit landed on my desk, but I wasn't. Somewhere deep down, I knew it was coming. My parents were never the kind of people to walk away quietly, especially when they thought they had something to gain. Still, reading my name printed on that legal document, Greg and Renee Bennett versus Nora Bennett, it hit me like a punch to the gut. Samantha found me standing at the window of my office, the letter still in my hand. "Do you want me to call Leo?" she asked gently. I nodded without turning around. Leo Chavez was my lawyer, sharp and steady, the kind of person who didn't flinch under pressure. He read through the lawsuit while I sat across from him, silent, waiting. When he finally looked up, he shook his head. "They're filing under a filial responsibility clause," he said. "Some states enforce it more than others. Colorado isn't strict about it, but if they make enough noise, it could drag out. Publicly, it's already messy." I leaned back in my chair, exhaling through my nose. "So, what are you saying? They're trying to force me to pay for the life they ruined?" He gave a small, tight nod. That's exactly what they're trying to do. We discussed strategy. He advised caution, careful language, avoiding escalation. But I was done playing small. Let them come, I told him. I'm not backing down. In the days that followed, the smear campaign only got louder. Fake accounts on social media kept popping up, spreading stories that I was cold, heartless, that I left my aging parents to rot while I lived a life of luxury. Some of these posts tagged our business partners, advertisers, clients. It was deliberate, coordinated.
And it worked.
Some sponsors pulled out. One board member questioned my leadership. A few long-time readers canceled their subscriptions. People love drama, especially when it comes with just enough lies to sound like truth. But I refused to let them own the story. I called another team meeting. This time, I stood in front of the staff and told them everything. Not in detail, not with emotion, but with clarity. I told them about my childhood, about being left behind, about what was happening now, about the lawsuit and the harassment. They were quiet when I finished, but no one left. No one judged me. Some even came up after to offer their support. One of our junior writers, someone I barely knew, handed me a sticky note that just said, "You're not alone." That night I posted again. Not just a paragraph this time, but a full statement.
Calm.
Factual.
Honest.
I built my life without them. Every job, every apartment, every sleepless night, I earned on my own. My success doesn't belong to anyone but me. I will not be shamed into silence. I will not fund the people who abandoned me. The post went viral within hours. People started pushing back against the narrative my parents had crafted. Comments rolled in, some from strangers, some from people I hadn't spoken to in years. Survivors. Fighters. People who had walked away from toxic families and lived to tell the story. And then, just when I thought maybe it was finally starting to settle, they showed up. It was a Tuesday afternoon. I was reviewing final edits for the next issue when Samantha buzzed through the intercom. Her voice was tense. "There's a couple here in the lobby. They say they're your parents." I didn't move. For a second, I just stared at the screen in front of me, not reading a single word. "They're making a scene," she added quietly. Of course they were. I stood slowly and walked out into the lobby. There they were. Renee, dressed like she was attending a funeral, complete with a handkerchief pressed to her cheek. Greg, arms folded, wearing that same old scowl that used to silence entire rooms. "Nora," Renee said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Please, honey, just talk to us." My stomach tightened. Greg stepped forward. "You think you're too good for us now, huh? You forget who raised you." I looked around the lobby. My staff was watching. Some were filming. I didn't care anymore. "You left me," I said clearly. "At 15. Alone. At an airport." Renee gasped a little too dramatically. "That's not fair. You needed to grow up." It was a tough love lesson. "No," I said, keeping my voice calm. "It was abandonment." Greg's face twisted. "We made you strong. Everything you have is because of us. You taught me what not to become." Security was already on their way. I gave them a nod. "Please escort these people out. You're going to regret this," Greg hissed as they were led away. Renee's voice was softer, but no less poisonous. Poor girl. So much success, but no heart. The doors closed behind them. I went back to my office and shut the door. My hands were shaking, but not from fear. From fury. Because I knew this wasn't over. Not yet. They would keep pushing until I stopped them for good. The next morning, I found an envelope slipped under my office door. No return address. Inside was a single note, typed and signed. "You don't get to erase us." I read it once, then again, and then I smiled. Because they were right. I wasn't erasing them. I was rising without them. After they were escorted out of my office building, I thought maybe, just maybe, they'd finally back off. But with people like my parents, backing off isn't in their nature. A few days passed without anything new, and I started to believe they'd run out of moves. Then the next blow came, not in person, not online, but through my business. One of our biggest investors forwarded me an email. It had screenshots, quotes pulled from nowhere, and accusations that I had a history of fraud, specifically financial misconduct involving my parents. The claim said I stole money from them, used their resources to build my career, and left them destitute. Anonymous sources. No facts. But the intent was clear. I could feel the heat rising at my neck as I read each word. This wasn't just a smear campaign anymore. This was an attack on everything I'd built. I called Leo. They're playing dirty, I said.
He sighed.
We can prove it's false. But if these claims reach the media, it could damage you more than the court case ever could. So what now? You fight back. Not just legally, but publicly. I hung up and stared at my reflection in the office window. Behind me, the city moved on like it always did. But inside me, everything slowed. My parents didn't want help. They wanted control. And when they couldn't get it with guilt or lies, they tried to burn down what I had built. So I gave them what they never expected.
The truth.
All of it. That night, I sat at my desk and wrote the most personal story I had ever shared. I didn't hold back. I told the world how I was left at 15 in a crowded airport, how I waited for them to come back, how they never did. I wrote about the $100 in my pocket, the 6-hour drive Uncle Ray made to get me, the years I spent working 2, sometimes 3 jobs while putting myself through school. I wrote about building my life with no handouts, no favors, just grit and survival. And I ended it simply. Family isn't defined by DNA. It's defined by love, loyalty, and who shows up. I chose myself. And I will continue to choose myself, no matter who tries to rewrite the past. I posted it just before midnight. By morning, it had gone viral. Messages poured in from all over the country, people thanking me for saying what they were too afraid to say themselves. Survivors of toxic families. People estranged from abusive parents. People who had walked away, and those who wanted to but didn't know how. The support was overwhelming. And for the first time in days, I breathed. The lawsuit dropped a week later. I didn't even have to countersue. Once they lost the public sympathy, they lost their power. Their lawyer backed off. Investors and clients returned. Some even praised me for handling the whole thing with grace and honesty. That should have been the end. But it wasn't. One evening, about a month after the storm had finally settled, there was a knock at my door. I wasn't expecting anyone, but when I opened it, there he was. Ethan. He looked even more tired than the last time I saw him. There were dark circles under his eyes, and his shoulders were slumped like the weight of all our history was pressing down on him. Nora, he said, voice cracking. Can I talk to you? I didn't answer. I just stepped aside and let him in. He sat on the edge of the couch like he wasn't sure he belonged there. They lost the house, he said quietly. Dad's drinking again. Mom keeps blaming everyone but herself. Me included. I didn't say anything. They still think you owe them something. I looked at him carefully. And what do you think? He swallowed hard. I think they broke something they can't fix. And I hate them for it. But I also hate how it's tearing everything apart. I didn't break this, I said softly. They did. I know. His voice was barely a whisper. There was a long silence between us. Then, tears in his eyes, he said, I just don't want to lose you too. I leaned forward, my voice firm but not unkind. You didn't lose me, Ethan.
They did.
And I'm not going back. I'm not stepping into that fire again just to make them feel better. I survived once. I won't crawl back just because they finally hit the bottom. He nodded, wiping his face. I get it. I stood and walked him to the door. Take care of yourself, I said. Truly. He left without asking for anything more. That was the first real sign he might be healing too. Later that night, I poured a glass of wine and sat out on my small balcony, the Denver lights flickering like tiny promises in the dark. The air was cool, peaceful, and for the first time in years, quiet. I opened my contacts and found Uncle Ray's name.
Dinner this weekend?
My treat. His reply came in seconds. Finally. I've been waiting. Mexican or Italian? I smiled. Mexican. Extra margaritas. Then I went to my blocked contacts list and removed 2 numbers. Not to talk. Not to reconnect. Just so I could see them there and know that I had a choice. And I chose peace. Again. Always.
My warm and trustworthy husband happily agreed to a shared living arrangement at my family home. However, once the renovations were finished, his behavior suddenly changed. Upon seeing our newly finished home, it became clear that there was no room for me. "Your room is over there." As he said this, I looked in the direction he pointed and saw a temporary prefab shack. "Thank you," I replied, while showing him something that made my proud husband realize something. I, Noel Diaz, am 27 years old and work as an office worker at a company. After graduating from university, I diligently saved up money, so I have a considerable amount of savings. When I started to seriously consider marriage, a friend introduced me to Ted, who later became my husband. We are of the same age. He was refreshingly good at conversation at our first meeting, and even I, who am usually shy, was able to open up to him immediately. We hit it off right away, exchanged contacts, and after meeting up several times, we began dating. He had a strong desire for marriage, and after a few months of dating, he quickly brought up the topic of marriage. I also wanted to get married, and his warm and sincere behavior made it impossible for me to consider anyone else. There was a reason behind rushing to get married. I lost my father in an accident when I was a primary school student, and my mother raised me lovingly on her own. We lived together as just the 2 of us for a long time. I wanted to marry early to reassure my mother, but I also had concerns about leaving her alone, so I thought about living near her even after getting married. When I discussed this with my husband, he was not displeased at all. Instead, he actively suggested, "How about the 3 of us live together at your parents' place?" I was very touched by his proposal. He was known at work for being serious and for treating people fairly, and he always prioritized me with his warm personality. Additionally, he had high interpersonal skills and quickly established a friendly relationship with my mother. That's why I was able to decide quickly to get married to him. After getting married, a new life began for me, my husband, and my mother. Even living together, his attitude remained consistent, and he was kind to my mother. The only change was that a few months after getting married, his sister, Dina, began visiting frequently. He has a sister studying at a university in New York, and she lives alone in a place relatively close to ours. She is 7 years younger than us, but is especially close to my husband and visits us often due to the proximity. Although his family lives in Florida, his sister relies heavily on him, which is why she chose to go to university in New York. Having grown up as an only child, I find that siblings who are close to each other wonderful and feel somewhat envious even as an adult. Their relationship was very good, and I learned that my husband took care of his sister instead of her parents, who often worked late hours, saying he was worried about his clingy sister. It was clear that the sister-in-law respected and trusted my husband a lot. I could understand their strong bond. Furthermore, her approachable personality was very charming, and it made me want to protect her. If I had a real sister, I imagined it would feel like this, but I always welcomed her warmly. She got along well with my mother, who was happy as if she had gained another daughter. And today, as I came back from work, my sister-in-law greeted me, saying, "Noelle, welcome back." Seeing her smile and our dog running towards me brought me relief and comfort. "Hi, Dina. I'm glad you came today." She came out of my husband's room saying, "You're early today," and soon after, my husband also appeared. They were probably enjoying a video game in his room. They were very close. My mother also worked, so she was hardly at home on weekdays. Additionally, since my husband worked in construction, he had a lot of free time on weekdays. My sister-in-law, who was a university student, often visited according to my husband's schedule. When I suggested, "You can also come on weekends," it seemed weekdays were better due to her part-time job arrangements. As our relationship was still new, I felt it might be difficult for her to visit casually when my husband was not around, so I ended the conversation there. I hope that someday we could interact without any hesitation, just like a real family. That day, my sister-in-law helped prepare dinner, and after enjoying the meal together, she returned home late at night. 6 months into our marriage, my husband brought up the idea of renovating. A contractor friend at work told him that he could do the work at a special price during this period. Renovating was expensive and not a decision to be made lightly. I hesitated. Still, my husband actively planned for a future children's room and a house design that would facilitate caregiving. I had never considered it before, but in reality, the house had aged and many problems were evident. Since the house was several decades old and the renovations could be done inexpensively, we decided to go for it. I was most touched by my husband's thoughtfulness about our future and my mother's living situation. When I suggested renovating the house to my mother, she agreed it was the right moment, and we quickly proceeded with the renovation. The details of the renovation and the layout meetings were set for weekdays, and my husband took charge of everything on behalf of us, who were busy. I had seen the rough layout and the new kitchen, and since my husband also had experience in the housing industry, I left everything to him without worry. During the meetings, my sister-in-law was present and mentioned, "The house is going to be very lovely." Since my mother and I had not attended the meetings, I was a bit perplexed by her presence, but she must have been there by chance on the days she visited. My sister-in-law, too, was looking forward to the completion of the house, and I was also excited with anticipation. And then the renovations finally started. Fortunately, our land was spacious enough that we set up a small prefab house in a corner of the property during the construction. Considering my mother, it was difficult for the three of us to live in a small space. So my husband and sister-in-law decided to stay at her apartment. They really got along well. I accepted my husband's suggestion without any particular concerns. The renovations are finished. I want you and your mother-in-law to come and see it after work. After a long-awaited 3 months, the renovations were completely finished. During that time, I received a message online from my husband while I was at work. He mentioned that the work had progressed faster than planned. So, I finished work a bit early and went to my mother's workplace to tell her the renovations were completed, and we went home together. When we arrived at the house, the scaffolding was gone and our freshly renovated home looked beautiful. The exterior was exactly as we had requested, and I was thrilled by the dramatic transformation. Then, from the newly renovated entrance, my husband and sister-in-law appeared, both sporting unsettling smiles at the front door. As I approached the house, my husband said, "Let me show you around," and we went inside. The interior was beautifully finished, and it seemed more functional. After my husband proudly showed us around the house, I was shocked to realize that there was no room for me and my mother. "Hey, where are mine and Mom's rooms?" Your mother's room is over there in the doghouse." He pointed to the temporary prefab house. Being aware of a certain fact, I firmly objected. "Do you know who owns this house? If you keep this up, I won't hesitate to divorce you." My husband replied, "What are you talking about?" But he was clearly shaken. "That's why you should be careful with what you say, or you'll regret it later," I warned him. As my sister-in-law was about to say, "What is she talking about?" my husband stopped her. "Fine, why don't you two live here for a while? We'll be fine in that shack." I responded, agreeing to the proposal. Then, my mother and I put a bold plan into action. Unknown to my husband, our family has been a well-known landowner in the area for generations, and my mother actually owned the vacant land next door. We decided to use the spare land to demolish the existing prefab house and build a new one. During that time, we lived in an apartment owned by my mother. Time passed, and instead of a dog house, a new house was completed. I then decided to visit my husband and sister-in-law after a long time. Meeting my sister-in-law after a while, she hadn't changed and provocatively asked, "How's life in the dog house?" Then, as if to show off to me, she wrapped her arm around my husband's and smiled smugly. They looked like a couple. My brother said, "If you're unhappy, you might as well divorce," he said, after which I sighed and pulled out an already filled out divorce form from my bag. The two of them were completely surprised by the divorce form and started making desperate excuses in their confusion. "Wait, I was just joking. Please stop fooling around. I'm really sorry," he said, approaching me with a forced laugh. As he tried to grab my arm, I quickly moved away and kept my distance. "A joke? I've already decided to divorce. Did you think I knew nothing? That doghouse we were living in was quite comfortable," I said, pointing to the new house next door. Faced with this scene, the two of them froze and their complexions quickly changed. My mother is actually a major landowner in this area. That's why we built that large doghouse next door. It's much bigger than this house. After that, I calmly revealed all the truth to them. Surprisingly, the two were half-siblings who were also in a romantic relationship. I had noticed their closeness before, but I never imagined such a situation would occur. I learned this shocking fact just before the home renovations began. One day, my mother returned from work. She witnessed the two together and felt something was off. Initially, I thought they were just very close and explained this to my mother, but it turned out they were behaving like lovers. They were seen walking closely together, holding hands. Hearing this, I started paying more attention to their behavior. While they were siblings, their intimacy didn't seem normal, but I thought some siblings could be this close. However, I turned out to be wrong. Previously concerned about our pet being left alone at home, my mother had a pet camera installed, and one day, she was shocked after seeing the footage. At my mother's urging, I watched the surveillance camera footage, which showed my husband and sister-in-law talking happily. Just when I was relieved to see a normal moment of their day, my sister-in-law suddenly wrapped her arms around my husband's neck. The footage captured next was too distressing to watch. The moment I saw that scene, I was so shocked that I couldn't think of anything. After a few minutes of silence, I regained my composure and decided to plan our next steps. My mother brought up the idea, and we decided to hire a detective to confirm our suspicions. A few days after the request, the report arrived, and upon reviewing it with my mother, it confirmed our suspicions about their relationship. The confirmation of the truth greatly unsettled me, and I felt the need to sever ties with them immediately. However, after consulting with my mother, we decided that before confronting them directly, we needed to prepare in order to maintain an advantageous position. We secretly started with the preparations, choosing the day of the renovation's completion as our action day to ensure that my husband and sister-in-law would not notice. Today, I revealed to them that I knew everything. Hearing my words, they turned pale and continued to deny their relationship, so I presented them with the video evidence and documents, which silenced them. It was impossible to keep hiding this fact from my in-laws, so I also informed his parents about this situation. I looked at my watch and told my husband that his parents would be arriving soon, which drastically changed his demeanor. He began to vehemently criticize me as if he were a different person. "This isn't a joke. There was no need to go this far. I have been working hard to protect our love, and you've ruined everything," he exclaimed. This was his true nature. It seems he had been hiding his true self and acting so he could spend time with his sister. In despair, my husband, overcome with anger, revealed all of their plans to me. Their relationship had been going on for a long time. They wanted to stay together out of love for each other and had planned our marriage to avoid suspicion from others. The relationship with me enabled this, using our spacious family home to continue hiding his relationship with his sister, and ultimately, the plan was to take over our house as well. The reason my sister-in-law was involved in the discussions during the renovations was also part of this plan. She was supposed to live with us as part of their scheme. The number of rooms they were so particular about was also due to that plan. Being married to me meant they could avoid suspicion from their parents and keep it secret from me and my mother, aiming to appear as the ideal brother to outsiders. My husband was crying as he embraced his sister, but she still did not fully grasp the whole situation and said smoothly, "Noelle, have you come to understand that our love is true? Unfortunately, you were just being used." This confident attitude of my sister-in-law, Dina, evoked pity in me. Though they claimed their love was true love, in reality they were only seizing what belonged to others and twisting facts to suit themselves. I felt an urge to avoid seeing their faces, but thinking back on how I had been unknowingly used, I decided to see their future through to the end. By the way, the sale of this house is already in progress. What? Why are you deciding on your own? I was supposed to live in a large house with my brother, she claimed selfishly. I informed them that the house was in my mother's name, and as the owner, she was free to do what she wanted with her property. They probably believed it was their house. Furthermore, I advised them that they could live as they pleased from now on, but they should not involve others. At that moment, I heard the sound of a car behind me and turned to see my husband's parents hurrying out of a taxi. Seeing this, they panicked and tried to flee, but were quickly spotted by the parents and forcibly pushed into the taxi. They continued to verbally abuse me tearfully. My in-laws apologized to us, and then the taxi drove off. After the ordeal, my mother and I quietly looked at our newly renovated home. Leaving the house we had lived in for so long was certainly hard. Especially for my mother, it must have been even harder. Along with my gratitude to my mother, I vowed to be a better daughter from now on. The family home was successfully sold, and we moved to our new house. About a week after the incident, I received a call on my phone from my in-laws saying they felt terrible and wanted to come and apologize. As the divorce proceedings needed to be advanced, I set a date and place to meet. As a result, my husband agreed to divorce and submitted the already filled-out divorce form. I signed the documents on the spot and decided to submit them to the city hall myself. My in-laws apologized so much they nearly bore a hole in our ears. They offered an amount greater than the usual alimony, expressing their desire to atone in some way. I refused to accept it, but they insisted it was the only way to find peace of mind. During this time, I heard more about the current situation of my husband and sister-in-law from my in-laws. Dina was forced to drop out of her university in New York and is now living at home, closely monitored by her parents. She was initially depressed, but recently her mental state has begun to stabilize. Considering her young age, I hope she will walk the right path from now on. My husband has been cut off from his family and was made to sign a pledge to keep distance from his in-laws to prevent further mistakes. This will likely prevent him from ever seeing his sister again. While my husband previously gave the impression of sincerity at his workplace, unfortunately, due to the scandal becoming widely known, he had to resign. His current whereabouts are unknown even to his parents and former colleagues. This situation arose from his attitude of using others. One could say he got what he deserved. Meanwhile, my mother and I have started a new life in a pet-friendly apartment with a fresh mindset. We have also found tenants for the house that was originally built to serve as a doghouse. Having caused my mother considerable trouble during this ordeal, I am planning a vacation with our beloved dog. Having learned that haste in marriage is to be avoided, I am now patiently waiting for a good match while focusing on being a better daughter to my mom. Witnessing my husband's selfish claim over the house of my late father, with whom we were living, as he declares, "I'm going to make my father-in-law's house mine. Can you really not understand anything?" My husband's shallow remark made me laugh beyond surprise. Seeing my long underestimated husband's family cornered by my retaliation, I, Katie Manning, had been living with my father and my husband, Ben. Since my mother passed away when I was in high school, my father raised me with endless love. My deep affection for my father remains unchanged. When I proposed living with my increasingly worrisome father to Ben, he warmly welcomed the idea of us living together in our home. "Are you really okay with this?" "I can manage on my own," my father asked me anxiously, a concern stemming from our cohabitation proposal. When I suggested living together, he initially smiled happily but soon looked worried. "I am always worried I might be a burden to you." My father always considered my feelings. However, after I expressed my desire to stay with him and Ben agreed, my father accepted with a smile. Today, Ben and I are moving into my childhood home. We began unpacking the boxes brought by the movers. Again with this? Haven't I always said this is what I wanted? You're right, Dad. Plus, this place has better access to work, which is also convenient for me. We explained, and my father nodded with a faint smile. After unpacking, we found my father had prepared coffee for us. I was about to take a coffee break when I heard footsteps coming downstairs. I thought you might want a break, so I prepared some for you too. Grateful for the warm hospitality, Ben and I enjoyed a break with him, feeling happy about the enriched life that lay ahead. After a short rest, we resumed unpacking, rolling up our sleeves for another push. Hey, if you want, you can quit your job. It's okay to stay and support your father. During the work, Ben made a surprising proposal, pausing me in astonishment. What do you mean? Think about it. Moving back here, we've cut down on our rent expenses, right? If you quit your job, taking care of your father and having fewer worries might be better, right? Currently, both of us work, with me mainly handling household chores. Though Ben helps sometimes, our days are still quite busy. I mulled over Ben's suggestion, feeling delighted at the prospect of spending more time with my father. Moreover, focusing on household chores seemed like it would reduce both mental and physical stress. Ben's proposal was very appealing, but it meant becoming financially dependent on him, which worried me. Grateful for his acceptance of the cohabitation, I pondered whether I should rely on Ben further. With a change of living environment, we decided to continue as before for now. Ben said, I don't want you to overdo it, but the cohabitation proposal was mine. I felt I couldn't always depend on Ben. A month has passed. Hey, maybe quitting your job for your father's sake is the best after all. When Ben suggested this again, I also thought it might be the best course of action. Living together turned out to lighten my daily load unexpectedly, mainly because my father took on household chores. Returning home, I found my father had already prepared dinner or cleaned the house. Yet, this seemed to increase his burden, making me feel guilty and contemplate quitting my job to take over the chores. Yeah, I might do that. I feel bad putting financial pressure on you, Ben. What are you thinking? There's no need to worry about that. Hearing those words, I made up my mind to quit my job. When I told my father about this decision, he urged me to continue working and leave the household chores to him. But after expressing my desire to help with the chores, he understood. As a result, I chose to quit my job and dedicate myself to our home, leading to more fulfilling days spent with my father. However, gradually, changes began to appear in our lives. I'm home. Welcome back, Ben. It must have been a tough day. Yo, is dinner ready? Ben's return home became later, and by the time he got back, my father was already asleep, decreasing the opportunities for us to eat together. Today, I was watching TV with Dad, but can you keep it down? I'm eating. Oh, sorry. When my father is nearby, Ben is as kind as he used to be, but lately, when it's just the two of us, he becomes quite cold. I feel like my quitting the job has added stress on him, and all I can do is apologize. After Ben finishes his dinner, I start to prepare his favorite evening drink, but he gets up to leave the dining area. Where are you going? What about your drink? I'm going to take a bath. He answered shortly and left, closing the door behind him with a bang. Whether he's in a bad mood or simply tired, these days leave me unable to help but sigh. The next day, I wait for Ben's return after my father has gone to sleep, but even past midnight, he hasn't come home. Worried, I try calling him but get no response. Just as I start to panic, thinking something has happened, an email arrives. What? The cold text of the email seemed to convey his feelings. Despite sighing, I felt relieved that he was safe. Still at work? I was worried because it's late. I replied, and his response came quickly. On a business trip. Those few words let me know he wouldn't be coming home tonight. I hadn't been informed about the trip, and I wish he had told me sooner, but expressing that might only irritate him further. So, you're on a business trip. Got it. How long will you be away? I sent this message, but no reply came. After that, Ben's business trips became more frequent, and he stopped telling me when he would leave or return home. My father, trying to be considerate, would ask about the situation when Ben was home, and he would answer with a cheerful smile that no longer seemed directed at me. No problem, I'm working hard for our family. Seeing his reaction made me feel like he was dissatisfied with me, and though I suggested we talk, he would say, I'm just busy or I'm tired. Let's talk later, and we never had a serious discussion. Eventually, Ben rarely returned home. Amidst growing distrust, I began to suspect he might be having an affair when I unexpectedly received a message from my mother-in-law. I need the address of the company Ben works for. A one-line email without any greetings. My in-laws have not been fond of me since the beginning of our marriage, throwing harsh words and malicious actions my way, leading to a natural distance between us. Ben understood this situation, and although it never worsened our relationship due to my in-laws' issues, it didn't improve either, and we continued to keep our distance. Receiving this sudden email from my mother-in-law, I pondered its intent before replying. It's been a while. May I know why you need Ben's work address? After sending this reply, it seemed she was indeed upset, as I immediately received an angry call. Hello, it's been a while. It's been a while. You've made Ben take care of your father and quit your job to do nothing at home. How can you do such a thing? Because of you, he's now returned to our house. He forgot his lunchbox today and went to the office, so I'm trying to deliver it. What are you going to do about this attitude? It's unforgivable. Give me the address right away. And from now on, Ben will be living at our house. Shocked by my mother-in-law's angry words, I was left speechless. It turned out that the days Ben claimed to be away on business trips, he had actually returned to his parents' home. Learning how my in-laws spoke about me was deeply shocking. It was Ben who said it would be okay for me to quit my job, yet I couldn't help but feel his true intentions were different. Overwhelmed with sadness, I felt like I couldn't stop my tears. Without arguing, I simply provided Ben's work address and ended the call. Trying to calm myself, I made some coffee in the living room when my father came in. Asking him if he would like some coffee with a smile as usual, he looked at me, smiled back, and accepted. As we enjoyed our coffee, my father started talking about the past. Your mom and I used to argue a lot when we were young. There were many misunderstandings, but we always tried to be honest with each other, and that's how we solved many issues. Couples who can argue and then fix their relationship might understand each other better and become stronger, he said warmly. His words deeply resonated with me, and I decided to have a serious conversation with Ben. That's true, Dad? Thank you, I told him, and he responded with a kind smile. Afterward, I sent an email to Ben outlining the facts from my conversation with his mother and expressing my desire to talk. However, Ben replied dismissively, making me sigh deeply. Anger towards Ben began to build inside me. I wanted to respond immediately in my emotional state, but took a deep breath to calm myself. This situation led to Ben stopping his contributions to our household finances. Attempts to contact him were met with silence, and messages about living expenses were ignored. My love for him gradually faded due to his selfish behavior. Finding no meaning in our marriage, thoughts of divorce crossed my mind. I was disappointed in Ben for being so irresponsible and self-centered. However, not wanting to worry my father further, I decided to postpone discussions about divorce and support myself using my savings from before we were married. Getting used to Ben's absence, I enjoyed my days with my father until he suddenly fell ill. Rushed to the hospital, we were told he didn't have much time left. Overwhelmed and unable to stop my tears, I couldn't hear the doctors or nurses. Visiting my father's room, he tried to smile and apologized for worrying me. Holding his hand, I smiled back, saying, "Don't worry, you'll get better," despite my eyes swelling with tears. Seeing my father, who looked sad despite laughing and asking, "What's with that face?" I felt tears welling up in my eyes again. Because hospitalization was necessary, I temporarily returned home to prepare what was needed. However, upon returning to my childhood home alone, I was overwhelmed by a sense of loneliness and I couldn't stop my tears. This house, where I grew up since I was a child. Even though I had left it when I got married, this place is filled with countless memories. Unable to bear the loneliness of being alone, I simply cried incessantly. During this difficult time, I received a cold message from Ben. Since we're living separately, handle your own expenses. Maybe use your father-in-law's pension? Reading this, I threw my phone in frustration. All my feelings for Ben vanished at that moment. Shaken by anger and sorrow, I realized dwelling on my feelings for Ben was a waste. Wondering how my father would feel seeing me like this calmed my mind. Regaining my composure, I washed my face and prepared to leave for the hospital. Just then, I received mail containing good news that could change my current situation. Seeing this, I made up my mind. Leaving the documents at home for now, I hurried to the hospital. My father's condition worsened gradually, and I had to accept that our time to say goodbye was nearing. Days passed with joyous conversations at the hospital, only to return home to tears. Eventually, my father passed away peacefully. I was there to witness his serene departure, but the sense of loss overwhelmed me, leaving me in tears. However, the legacy my father left was immeasurable and deeply etched in my heart. The funeral, with the help of relatives, went smoothly, but Ben and my in-laws did not show up until the end. I hadn't specifically informed them about my father's passing, so I hadn't expected them to attend. Nonetheless, it seemed they had learned of his death through relatives because, a few days after settling the estate and paperwork, Ben suddenly appeared with a lot of luggage. It's been a while. I heard your father passed away. Seeing Ben's face stirred anger within me, but I suppressed the impulse and took a deep breath to remain calm. What do you want? What's with the luggage? Isn't that a bit harsh for a husband returning home? Oh, this luggage is my parents' stuff. Huh? The fact that Ben used the word husband was profoundly irritating. His words made no sense to me. After he had left the house, stopped providing for living expenses, and lived as he pleased, claiming now to be a husband was beyond surprising. It was appalling. I was at a loss for words. Were you waiting for me? Jobless, struggling with living expenses, and left alone to care for your father? Happy, are you? So happy you're speechless? No, it seems I was the one caught in your plan. Ben's mention of a plan caught my attention, prompting me to ask for clarification. The answer I received was unbelievable. Living with an old man was something I couldn't accept. Impossible to live with the elderly. But saying that might make you think about divorce. If we divorced, I couldn't get this house. So, I chose to live together and pushed you into unemployment by pretending to be the ideal husband, making you dependent on me and the elderly man. That way, the house would become mine. Hearing his words, I found myself glaring at Ben sharply. This was not normal thinking. Reflecting on our marriage made me despise myself and feel deep guilt towards my father. I struggled to contain my trembling anger. Your story doesn't add up. You're the one who left and stopped paying the living expenses. When I pointed this out, Ben scratched his head in annoyance. Yeah, I had reached my limit. I didn't realize I was so short-tempered. But I thought the plan would work even without me, assuming you wouldn't have the courage to bring up divorce. His smug smile made me forget what had ever attracted me to him. I no longer wanted to see his face or hear his voice. My feelings towards Ben had become unbearable. The plan worked. This house might be old, but it's spacious and well located. It'll be worth a lot when sold. From today, my parents and I will live here. Could there be anyone more self-centered? It seemed morality was foreign to him, which wasn't surprising considering his parents. As I stood dumbfounded, he continued to insult me further. The house of your father is mine. Get out. Watching my in-laws' belongings being moved in, I realized Ben was completely oblivious to the situation. Ben looked down on me confidently, disrespecting my father and making it impossible to leave things as they were. Seeing Ben standing there so smugly made me burst into laughter, unable to hold it back. My sudden laughter confused Ben. Have you lost your mind? That's the perfect description for you. The thought of confronting him with reality made my laughter uncontrollable. Seeing me laugh, Ben became furious. However, ignoring his reaction, I laid out the reality. Don't you know? This is my house. It could never become yours. Surprised and frozen by my words, I continued. Besides, you and I are now unrelated. Didn't your mother tell you? Laughing as I said this, Ben seemed utterly stunned. Then, he immediately started contacting someone on his smartphone, apparently his mother. What, Mom? Katie's saying something weird. We haven't divorced, have we? She said I hadn't heard anything from you. What do you mean, you sent it? Really? How did this happen? Watching Ben's speechless reaction, it seemed he finally grasped the situation. After ending the call, Ben's expression was twisted as if he was looking at something incomprehensible. Did you really submit a divorce application? He asked. Yes, I did. The day your father was taken to the hospital, your mother sent me a completed divorce form by post, which I happily submitted the next day. Your mother has her moments, doesn't she? I replied. Damn it. Even if it arrived, you weren't supposed to submit it. It was something my mother made me write just in case, not intending to actually divorce. Ben was furious. But you filled it out yourself, didn't you? Whether or not you intended to doesn't matter. I completed the divorce process as you wished, so you should be thanking me, I calmly retorted. Seeing Ben frustrated, I felt a sense of relief inside. The divorce form from my mother-in-law might have been intended as harassment, but for me, wanting a divorce, it was a stroke of luck. Later, Ben anxiously questioned me about property division and the house's ownership, but I dismissed his concerns. It was clear there were no significant assets to divide, so I informed him there was no need for division. I explained that due to the short cohabitation period with my father and the assets being in my father's name at the time of the divorce, they were not subject to division. Ben insisted on a financial demand, claiming even my savings from before marriage should be split, but I informed him his claims had no basis. He turned pale, attempting to argue but only opening and closing his mouth, resembling a fish out of water. Though tempted to mock him, I chose to maintain a mature demeanor and calm myself. Let's send this here. It's problematic for someone to bring their belongings into another person's home uninvited, which clearly constitutes trespassing. If you plan to stay any longer, I'll have to call the police. As I said this, Ben hurriedly gathered his belongings and left. I spread salt at the entrance and prayed to my parents' portraits. This is for the best. I'll become stronger, so please watch over me. Thinking of my parents meeting again in heaven eased my loneliness and lightened my heart. Emboldened by this new resolve, I began looking for a job. It was then that a friend contacted me, knowing I was job hunting, and offered to introduce me to a job that matched my expertise. Thanks to their recommendation, I quickly secured a position after an interview with HR. A few days later, I received a message from Ben. Sorry for being stubborn the other day. Actually, I wanted to start over with you, which is why I came to the house. Finding the message unbelievable, I struggled with how to reply but ultimately decided to ignore it. Yet, Ben continued to send poetic messages like a relentless suitor. Once, we were like the sun and the moon. Days spent longing for you, unreachable, are now behind us. Now, we can be closer. Without your love, I'm nothing. Won't you give me your overflowing love once more? I'll dedicate everything to you. I treasure you more than anything. Our love will last forever. No matter where I am, I'll continue to love you, for your heart is my home. Each time I received these poetic messages, I shared them with colleagues, wondering if they could serve as material for work. Currently working as an illustrator in a cartoon editorial department, these emails sometimes prove to be useful inspiration. Look, the melodramatic stalker is back. It's great to have something to laugh about in tough times. Unknowingly, Ben has become a source of amusement. Feeling only discomfort from his messages, I've been avoiding replying. Amid these days, the doorbell at my home rang. Looking through the peephole, I saw Ben standing outside. I had never expected him to show up in person, so I decided to call the police immediately. Hey, I know you're in there. I can see your car. Please, just listen to me. I'm really in trouble right now. There was talk of moving into this house, so my parents sold their home. Now, I have nowhere to go. Help me. I could hear his voice shouting from outside, but what does that have to do with me? It highlights his recklessness for not correcting the situation the day they misunderstood this house as their own. His emails showed he hadn't given up, but I was merely astonished by his and his family's naive thinking. While the police were convincing Ben to leave, he resisted strongly but was eventually taken away by them. After that, when there was no response to the flood of Romeo emails, contacts from my in-laws began. At first, they tried calling, but when I ignored that, they switched to emails. How can you know we're in a difficult situation and not offer any help? You should contact us immediately. Why not have a serious discussion? We were once a family. Isn't it too cruel to be so indifferent? You caused us to lose our home. Now we live in a dilapidated apartment. Why won't you hand over the house? You must have received inheritance from your father. You're not struggling financially. We quit our jobs. You should take responsibility. If the child is like this, of course, the parents are too. Do they think their decisions will always prevail? I was infuriated by the audacious emails. How can they disregard others to such an extent? Although I intended to ignore them, I ended up blocking Ben and my in-laws' contacts. I considered changing my contact information, but it felt ridiculous to spend money just because of them. I was determined to ignore them, but I reached my limit. I optimistically thought blocking them would restore my peace, but soon realized my approach was short-sighted. One day, my former in-laws showed up at my doorstep. Despite being fed up with their endless harassment, understanding they knew my address made me realize such incidents were inevitable. However, I did not want to leave this house filled with many memories. Come out, you know we're in trouble. Change your mood? I'm proposing we get back together, accept it. How can you ignore someone in trouble? What kind of human does that? The doorbell and knocking were incessant, but I did not hesitate to call the police. Suddenly, the noise from outside stopped. Peeking through the hole, I saw an unfamiliar man arguing with my former in-laws. Go home, you're bothering people. The sudden appearance of the man puzzled my former in-laws. What did you say? Who are you? Could it be an affair partner? Unfazed by their backlash, the man looked at them coldly. Your attitude is the problem. Look around. This is a residential area. Look, people are gathering because of you. You're really causing a disturbance. Indeed, through the limited view of the peephole, I could see neighbors gathering, which felt somewhat embarrassing. However, seeing my former family flustered and stuttering but was when the police arrived. It seemed one of the officers had encountered this scene before, saying to Ben, "It's you guys again." Hearing this, my former in-laws' faces turned red. How much trouble are you going to cause? Get some awareness. I silently thanked the man as he walked away, relieved. Afterward, my former in-laws were taken away in a police vehicle, and the onlookers dispersed. Hours later, the doorbell rang again, and peering through the peephole, I saw the man from the earlier argument standing there. Surprised to see him, I hesitated before cautiously opening the door. The man greeted me with a warm smile. It's been a while. If you were back, you should have let me know. I recognized his face, but I couldn't immediately recall who he was until he reintroduced himself. Don't tell me you've forgotten. It's been over 10 years, after all. Remember me? I'm Scott. Hearing his name, memories flooded back. Scott, my childhood friend, known as Scotty in our hometown. Scotty. Now that you mention it, you really are Scotty. Scott used to live next door and we hadn't seen each other since changing elementary schools. Finally remembered, I've moved back to the area. We're neighbors again. It's really been a long time. And thank you for earlier. It meant a lot to me. After expressing my gratitude again, Scott just laughed it off, making me smile too. We caught up on old times, and I ended up telling him about the recent disturbances. Scott promised to support me whenever needed, proving to be a reliable friend. When I mentioned my father's passing, Scott offered to pay his respects, remembering him from our childhood. The joy of having someone who shared my past was profound. Days passed, and I received a letter from a law firm out of the blue containing a notification. Opening the unexpected envelope, I found it claimed I had committed infidelity during my marriage, demanding payment for damages. Shocked by the situation, I noticed a message from an unknown email address on my smartphone titled regarding the notification. The message read, "Your ex-husband Ben has initiated a lawsuit claiming marital infidelity on your part. Admitting and dealing with this straightforwardly will avoid escalating the matter. We plan to inform your workplace. Considering your future, we advise settling this matter promptly," suggesting a threat. It was clear this was a scheme by my former in-laws, not a genuine liar's notification. Upon closer inspection, the quality of the notification raised doubts about its authenticity, prompting me to consult a real lawyer. The lawyer confirmed it was a complete forgery, and the supposed attorney's name was not registered, revealing the document as fake. Despite knowing better, I decided to play along in my reply, indicating a willingness to consider their claims but asking for evidence of my supposed infidelity. The alleged mental anguish suffered by Ben is immense, and we seek compensation for that, they replied, without any tangible proof. Such baseless claims seemed unlikely to involve legal professionals. I assert there was no infidelity on my part, hence no evidence exists. It's hard to believe professionals would intervene based on such unfounded claims, wouldn't you agree? Moved by Ben's passion, we wish to assist him. We expect your sincere cooperation, not intending to escalate this matter further. Quite an emotional approach for a professional. You're aware impersonating a lawyer is illegal and punishable, right? Just to confirm, you do hold legitimate qualifications? This inquiry halted their previously prompt responses. Curious about the next move, I received a new email. I am indeed a professional. However, your arguments were unbeatable. We've decided to withdraw the lawsuit. No need for withdrawal, as I have no passion for this matter and am entirely calm about being falsely accused of infidelity. I intend to legally counter this. Looking forward to meeting this passionate lawyer in court. After this exchange, all communication ceased. However, the silence did not last long as my former in-laws once again showed up at my house. Despite it being late at night, they started begging loudly at the front door. We made a mistake. Please spare us from the lawsuit. Awakened by the noise, I checked the time and it was past 1 a.m. Anger at being deprived of sleep reached its peak, and I yelled, "Please be quiet. Stop bothering me." Never having seen me so angry before, my former in-laws couldn't hide their surprise. If you come any closer and cause more trouble, I won't overlook it. With that declaration and grabbing my father's wooden sword that was at hand, my former in-laws' expressions changed drastically. Especially my former mother-in-law and Ben, who seemed to tremble in fear, whispering, "We're so sorry. You should have changed your actions from the beginning if you were sorry. Never appear before me again." I scolded, and my former mother-in-law nodded with tears in her eyes. Then, the lights of a patrol car caught my eye, heading our way. Due to the late hour, it seemed neighbors had reported them, and my former in-laws were immediately taken away by the arriving officers. They tried to attack me with a wooden sword. My former mother-in-law pointed at me and appealed to the police, but she was taken away. When the police asked me, "Is this true?" I explained the doorbell kept ringing and someone was banging on the door at this hour, so I took the wooden sword for self-defense, to which they nodded understandingly. Scott was by my side and told the police he had witnessed the former in-law's repeated visits. With his testimony, the police deemed the actions malicious and promptly took my former in-laws away, finally restoring peace. The next day, following Scott's advice, I filed a report. With multiple incidents involving the police already, the process went smoothly. Scott mentioned he had noticed the former in-law's assault the previous night and was about to say something when he heard me shouting. According to him, my voice was terrifying. Subsequently, a restraining order was issued against my former in-laws and they never troubled me again. Moreover, someone had recorded the commotion, and the footage ended up on the internet, making them the secret talk of the neighborhood, unable to move due to lack of financial means. It's unclear how they're living now, but they're probably relying on the former in-laws' retirement funds. As for me, Scott and I grew closer rapidly, and within a few months of reuniting, he confessed his love and we started dating. Scott always makes me smile, and the time he spent with him is genuinely happy. I feel like this turn of events is a gift from my father, filling me with gratitude.
I paid for my sister's luxury beach birthday party. 2 days before, she uninvited me, saying I was just the ATM, not family. I canceled everything, silenced my phone, and waited. 32 missed calls later, I answered and said just 3 words.
She cried.
Mom begged. I laughed, because what I did next, they never saw it coming. My name is Lena, and if you met me now, you'd probably think I have it all together. I'm 29, living in Denver, working as a software engineer, and honestly, life looks good from the outside. I've got a great apartment, good income, a few close friends, and peace. But it took a long, messy road to get here, and if you'd asked me 10 years ago, I never would have believed I'd make it this far. I've learned that peace sometimes means walking away from the people you once called family. It all started when I was 16. My mom died suddenly. One day, she was there, making breakfast, humming to old love songs, and the next she was gone.
Just like that.
I don't think my dad ever recovered. I didn't either, not right away. Everything in the house felt too quiet, too cold. Dad, Frank, tried to keep things going, but you could see it in his eyes. He wasn't really there anymore. Less than a year later, he brought someone new into our lives. Her name was Melissa. She had this polished smile, salon-perfect hair, and a sugary voice that made my skin itch even then. She walked into our kitchen like she owned the place. And by her side was this bright-eyed little girl named Aubrey, 6 years old, bouncing around in sparkly shoes and a butterfly backpack. Dad told me they were getting married. I didn't know what to say. I was still trying to understand why my mom wasn't coming back, and now I had to adjust to this new woman playing house in her place. But I tried. Really, I did. Aubrey was sweet at first. She followed me around, asked me to help her with puzzles, snuck into my room to show off her drawings. For a little while, I actually liked having her around. It felt like maybe I was gaining a little sister, and I remember thinking, okay, maybe this won't be so bad. But Melissa, she never saw me as part of her family. From the beginning, she'd ignore me in the hallway, barely said good morning, and her attitude only got colder. I'd walk into a room, and she'd suddenly start whispering to Dad like I wasn't supposed to hear. Over time, I started noticing changes in Aubrey too. She stopped visiting my room, stopped asking me to play. She barely looked at me. At first, I blamed myself. Maybe I'd done something wrong. But one day, I overheard Melissa talking to her in the kitchen. "She's not really your sister, sweetheart," Melissa said in that fake sweet tone of hers. "She's just your dad's daughter. You don't need to spend so much time with her." I remember standing there, frozen, like I'd just stepped into some cruel version of reality. Everything made sense after that. The distance, the silence, the cold stares. Melissa had been quietly erasing me from the family, and she was using a 6-year-old to do it. So I gave up trying. I stopped knocking on Aubrey's door, stopped sitting at the dinner table hoping for a warm glance or a kind word. It was like I disappeared in my own home, and no one even noticed. Instead, I focused on my studies. I buried myself in books and coding and college applications. That was my way out. When I got accepted into a great university on a full scholarship, I didn't even tell them right away. I just packed and left. And once I was gone, the distance only grew. We barely spoke. No calls, no real connection. Maybe a birthday text here and there from Dad, but that was it. Deep down, I always believed Melissa had something to do with that. Every time Dad tried to reach out, she probably had a reason for him not to. Years passed. I built my life from the ground up. Finished college, got into a great tech company in Denver, climbed the ladder. With each promotion, I felt a little stronger. I had my own space, my own money, and most of all, my own peace. Then, out of nowhere, my phone rang one morning. I almost didn't answer. It was Dad. "Hey, sweetheart, how are you?" His voice was soft, almost unsure. We hadn't spoken properly in years. I was caught off guard. "I'm good," I said cautiously. "How are you?" "I've been thinking," he continued. "Maybe it's time we reconnect. Start fresh. Come by for dinner this Sunday? Melissa would love to see you too." That last part made my stomach twist. Melissa would love to see me? That didn't sound right. But still, I was curious. So that Sunday, I drove to their house for the first time in years. Melissa greeted me at the door with a wide smile and a hug like we were old friends. "Lena, we've missed you," she said. I stood there stiffly, trying to figure out what game she was playing. This was the same woman who once made me miss a family dinner by forgetting to tell me the time had changed. Inside, everything felt strange. Familiar walls, unfamiliar warmth. Aubrey, now a teenager, barely looked up from her phone when I walked in. We sat around the living room, making small talk about weather and traffic and things that didn't matter. Then, over the next few weeks, the real reason for the sudden invitation started to show. First, it was a casual mention of how expensive groceries had become. Then, the next week, Melissa brought up a plumbing issue. A week later, it was a broken heater. "Lena, we hate to ask, but could you help us out a little?" Dad said one night, eyes on his coffee cup. "Just until we get things back on track." I wanted to believe it was genuine. I wanted to believe they cared. So I said yes. $200 here, $500 there. Then $1,800. It added up fast. But I kept giving. Because some part of me still craved their approval. Still hoped for a connection. Then came Aubrey's 19th birthday. Melissa called me, full of excitement. "We're planning a beach party. Big celebration. She's growing up so fast. It would mean the world if you could help with the cost." I agreed, thinking maybe this could be my chance to rebuild something with Aubrey. I even started planning a surprise, covering her first-year college tuition. $6,000. It wasn't pocket change, but I could manage it. Maybe, just maybe, this would be the moment that brought us closer. But I had no idea what was really coming. 2 days before the beach party, my phone rang. I was just finishing up a call with a caterer, finalizing the menu. Grilled seafood, sliders, pasta trays, a chocolate fountain, and this gorgeous 3-tier cake with coral and seashell decorations. I'd picked everything with care, hoping it would make Aubrey's day special. I even imagined the look on her face when I'd surprise her with the news that her first year of college would be fully paid. Then I saw her name flashing on my screen, Aubrey. It was strange. She never called. We barely spoke during my Sunday visits. Most of the time, she sat in the corner scrolling on her phone, barely muttering a hey. So, a call from her? I answered, thinking maybe this was it. Maybe she wanted to say thank you, or just talk. But her voice was cold, almost rehearsed. Hey Lena, she said flatly. So, about the party. I waited. My heart was already doing this weird sinking thing. We're actually making some changes. Cutting down the guest list. Just keeping it close, real family and friends. I blinked. Okay, what does that mean? She didn't even hesitate. It means we're not including you. No hard feelings or anything. Just trying to keep it tight. No hard feelings? I sat there, stunned. This girl, whose party I had fully funded, was uninviting me because I wasn't real family? I wanted to believe it was some kind of joke, that maybe she'd call back laughing and say she was kidding. But that call never came. I stared at my screen after she hung up. My hands were shaking. I didn't cry. Not at first. I just sat in silence, hearing those words echo in my head. We're not including you. Real family and friends. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I replayed every moment over the past few months. Every dollar I'd handed over. Every dinner where I was met with silence. Every fake smile from Melissa. Every quiet hope that maybe, just maybe, they'd changed. I was done. The next morning, I called the catering company. Hi, this is Lena Mitchell. I need to change the delivery address for Saturday's order. The woman on the phone paused. The full beach party order? Yes, I said. Same time, same order. Just a new address. I gave her the name and location of a downtown homeless shelter I'd volunteered at during college, Hope Street Housing. They'd just added a women's wing last year. I remembered thinking they probably didn't get fancy meals often. Wow. The woman said quietly after I explained. That's really kind of you. I didn't tell her the whole story. I didn't need to. After I hung up, I put my phone on silent and went about my day. I blocked Melissa's number. I blocked Aubrey's. I even muted texts from Dad. 32 missed calls. Eventually, I answered one. It was Dad. Lena, where's the food? The guests are arriving soon. I said just 3 words. Ask your daughter. And I hung up. I wish I could describe the feeling that followed. It wasn't just satisfaction, it was clarity. Years of being used, of chasing love that never came, of shrinking myself to keep the peace, and finally, I had taken that peace back. That night, I opened a bottle of wine and watched a movie by myself, smiling the whole time. The reports came in the next day, mostly from my friend Serena, whose cousin happened to be at the beach party. She called me laughing so hard, she had to pause twice to breathe. Girl, it was chaos. Melissa ran to some deli to buy sandwich platters and chips. Half the guests left early. Aubrey was screaming and crying. She actually threw a gift bag into the ocean. People were whispering, wondering what happened. And your dad? He came back with a tray of grocery store cupcakes. I didn't feel bad. Not even a little. I had spent thousands trying to be accepted by a family who never wanted me. And when I finally said no, they fell apart. A few days later, my dad called again. His voice was quiet, controlled. Lena, what you did hurt your sister. I almost laughed. My sister? She's young. She made a mistake. I waited for the part where he'd say sorry, where he'd acknowledge what they'd done. But it never came. We still need to talk about her college tuition, he continued. And there it was. The real reason for the call. No, Dad, I said calmly. There's nothing to talk about. She's counting on you. Well, she shouldn't. He tried guilt. He tried anger. But I stayed firm. Finally, I said, you told me I wasn't family. So now I'm acting like it. That was the last time we spoke. Weeks passed, and then I heard from Serena again. You're not going to believe this, she said. Turns out your dad and Melissa used their savings to lease a luxury SUV, like right before the party. They thought you'd handle the college stuff, so they spent the money. I just shook my head. Of course they did. Now, apparently, Aubrey is refusing to get a job. She won't move out. She's protesting, literally. Says she won't speak to them until they fix the situation. Fix the situation? They created it. All of it. And for once, I wasn't part of the mess. Instead, I was planning my first solo trip to Hawaii. I signed up for a painting class. I started walking to work instead of driving just to enjoy the quiet. I didn't need their approval anymore. I didn't need to be included. Because I finally realized being used isn't love. And choosing yourself isn't selfish. It's survival. It happened a couple of peaceful weeks since the beach party fiasco. I thought the silence meant they had finally gotten the message that I was done being their doormat. I was wrong. One morning, I opened the door to get my mail, and there they were. Melissa and Aubrey standing outside my apartment building like it was totally normal. Melissa had her finger halfway to the doorbell, and Aubrey was wearing sunglasses like she was trying to hide her face. I didn't even say a word. I closed the door right in their faces. I don't know what they were expecting. A warm hug? An apology session where I just gave in again? After everything, they still thought I owed them something. That I'd crack if they just showed up. They came back the next day too. And the next. Sometimes both of them, sometimes just Melissa. I started using the back exit and told the building manager not to let them in. Then, about a week later, Aubrey sent me a text. We need to talk. I know I overreacted about the party. The guest list thing was just a joke. Can we just forget it and move on? I stared at the message for a long time. A joke? Now it was a joke. She uninvited me from the party I paid for, called me not family, and then expected me to forget it all like nothing happened? I almost didn't respond. But then something clicked. You're right, I texted back. It was a joke. And I thought it was hilarious. Especially the part where I sent all the food to a homeless shelter. Wasn't that funny? No reply. But the silence told me everything. She didn't know. Of course she didn't. Melissa and Frank had never told her. They didn't tell her I was planning to pay her tuition either. I was sure of it. If she had known, she would have played nice.
Pretended to be sweet.
She would have hugged me at the party and cried when I gave her the check, and I probably would have fallen for it. Again. In a weird way, I was grateful for her cruelty. It was real. It was honest. That one careless moment where she said I wasn't family, that had set me free. Of course, that wasn't the end of it. About 3 days later, I started getting messages from people I hadn't spoken to in years. My Aunt Rachel, Cousin Ben, even some family friends from back in high school. Apparently, Frank and Melissa had been busy telling their version of the story to everyone who would listen. The tale they spun? Poor Aubrey, heartbroken on her birthday, left with no food because her cold-hearted sister pulled out last minute. Poor Frank and Melissa, trying to bring the family together while I just kept punishing them for the past. No mention of the thousands I had spent. No word about the uninvitation. No talk about the SUV they blew their savings on. I started getting voicemails full of guilt trips. Family has to stick together. She's just a kid, Lena. Don't let money ruin your relationships. One message even said, how could you let her future suffer like this? Don't be so selfish. Selfish. That word again. I'd been called selfish every time I said no. Every time I asked for space. Every time I stopped handing over my time, energy, and money with no thanks in return. At first, I tried to explain. I told one cousin everything. The party, the money, the tuition, the guest list. But she didn't believe me. Said it didn't sound like Aubrey. That's when I realized something important. They weren't really calling for me.
They were calling about me.
I was the villain in their version, and they needed me to fix the ending. Not one person asked how I felt. Not one asked what had happened from my side. So I turned off my phone. For 3 days straight, no calls, no messages, no notifications. Just silence.
And peace.
That weekend, I went to a small art fair downtown. I bought a canvas, some brushes, and a set of acrylic paints. I hadn't painted in years, not since high school. I set up a little corner by the window in my apartment and started brushing color across the blank space, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I felt like I could breathe. It wasn't about art. It was about me. Doing something because I wanted to, not because someone expected it, not because I was being guilted into it. 2 days later, another knock at my door. This time, it was just Melissa. She was holding an envelope. I didn't open the door all the way, just cracked enough to hear her.
We just want to talk, she said.
Aubrey's really hurting. I stared at her. Then, maybe she should have thought about that before she called me an outsider. Melissa frowned. She's a teenager.
She's 19, I said.
Old enough to know better. She made a mistake. We all make mistakes. I let out a dry laugh. You didn't make a mistake, Melissa. You made a plan. And I finally stopped playing along. She held out the envelope. Just read it. Please. I didn't take it. I shut the door. I tossed the envelope in the trash without even opening it. Maybe it was a letter, maybe it was a guilt trip in written form, maybe even an invoice. I didn't care. I was done.
Completely.
They could twist the story however they wanted. They could knock and call and spread lies.
But they no longer had access to me.
Because for the first time in my life, I was choosing myself. And I wasn't looking back. A few months passed after that final knock on my door. I didn't hear from any of them again. Not Melissa, not Aubrey, not even my dad. At first, the silence felt heavy, like something was missing. But the longer it lasted, the lighter I felt. There were no more sudden texts asking for money, no more fake apologies followed by veiled requests. My life finally felt like my own. Then, one afternoon, my friend Serena called. She had news. You're not going to believe this, she said, already laughing before she got the words out. So, you know Aubrey? Of course I knew. I just waited for her to continue. She blew up at your dad and Melissa last week. Full-on meltdown. Screaming, crying, threatening to move out, the works. I raised an eyebrow. What happened now? They finally had to tell her that they used up their savings. Apparently, she thought they were going to pay for her college after all. I leaned back in my chair. Let me guess, they were counting on me again. Bingo. She found out they leased that new SUV right before the party, thinking you'd cover the tuition. When they told her, she lost it. Said they lied to her. Said they ruined her future. Part of me should have felt sad for her, I guess. But I didn't. This was the same girl who had called me an outsider and uninvited me from her party. The same girl who didn't even say thank you when I handed over money for the heater, the groceries, or the dozens of other things they couldn't manage. Now she was just facing what I had faced for years, manipulation dressed up as family love. She's refusing to work, Serena continued. Won't get a job, won't apply for loans, says she's protesting until they figure out how to fix it. Neighbors say she's locked herself in her room, comes out just to fight with them. It's apparently a full-blown war over there. I almost felt sorry for Frank, for my dad. But then I remembered the phone call after the party, the way he brushed past everything and immediately brought up tuition like I was some kind of walking scholarship. He didn't defend me when Aubrey hurt me. He didn't apologize for Melissa's years of coldness. All he ever wanted was what I could give, not who I was. They created this, I said quietly into the phone. This is what happens when you raise someone to believe they don't need to earn anything. Serena sighed.
Yeah.
I mean, it's sad, but you're right. After that, I didn't think about them much anymore. Occasionally, someone would mention them in passing, an old neighbor, a distant cousin, but I never asked for details. I didn't need to know. Their drama was no longer mine to solve. Instead, I focused on things that made me feel alive again. I took long walks around the city. I joined a small painting group that met every Thursday at this cozy little studio downtown. I signed up for yoga classes, not because I wanted to get in shape, but because I liked the quiet, the calm, the feeling of breathing in peace and breathing out all the noise. And then I booked my trip to Hawaii. It wasn't anything fancy. Just me, a beachside Airbnb, a couple of paperbacks, and no plans. I didn't post pictures. I didn't share updates. It was mine, just mine. And it felt like freedom. Sitting on that beach, listening to the waves crash, I thought back to the girl I used to be. The one who waited for text messages that never came. The one who kept writing checks hoping to be loved. The one who believed that if she just gave a little more, tried a little harder, maybe she'd finally be accepted. That girl deserved better. And now she had it. I came home from that trip with a tan, a full heart, and zero regrets. One last message did come through about a month later. From Aubrey. Somehow, I hadn't blocked her number on email. It said, "I know things got messy. I just wish we could go back to how they used to be. I miss having a sister." I read it twice. And then I deleted it. Because here's the truth. We never had a real sisterhood. What we had was a lie Melissa built and later tore down. Aubrey was just a kid, yes, but at 19, you know what cruelty is. You know when you're choosing to hurt someone. She made her choice and I made mine. I no longer chase people who don't want me. I no longer offer love where there's only expectation. And I no longer believe that family is about blood. It's about how you're treated, how you're seen, how you're respected.
So no.
I didn't go back. I didn't reply. I didn't fall for it again. Because I learned something in all of this. Peace isn't something you're given. It's something you claim. And I finally claimed mine. I turned Dad's bankrupt shop into a $200 million empire. At our annual gala, he handed it to my dropout stepbrother, claiming I had mental issues. I walked out without a word. But the next morning, they walked into a disaster I'd quietly planned for years. And that was just the beginning. My name is Layla Monroe. And this is the story of how I lost everything and then built something even greater. People always say that family is supposed to be your greatest support, your safe place. But what happens when the people you trust the most are the very ones who pull the ground out from under you? It all started when I was just a teenager. My dad, Robert Monroe, ran a small electronics retail shop in Austin, Texas. It was the kind of place that sold used laptops, custom PC builds, and the occasional piece of refurbished tech. Business wasn't booming, but it kept food on the table until the market shifted and everything started falling apart. Competition from big box chains and online retailers nearly buried us. Debt piled up. The store was on the verge of bankruptcy. My mom passed away in a tragic car accident when I was 16. She was the calm in our storm, the reason I stayed grounded when everything else felt like it was collapsing. After she was gone, it was just me and Dad, until he remarried Tracy, a wellness coach he met through one of his business acquaintances. Tracy was different. She came into our lives all smiles and smoothies, with her motivational quotes and morning yoga. But I could tell early on that her affection for my dad was tightly wound around what he could provide. When she moved in, she brought along her son, Jake Rivers, a boy 2 years younger than me with a cocky smile and a resume full of unfinished things. He was a college dropout, drifting between ideas but never really committing to anything. Still, I kept my head down. I enrolled in a local university and pursued a degree in computer science, working long hours at the shop while studying at night. I wasn't the loud type or the flashy one. I didn't need to be. I had a vision, one that no one else seemed to see. I believed our business could still thrive, but it needed to evolve. I started building something small, a custom AI-powered e-commerce platform that could automate our online inventory, manage orders, and recommend products to customers based on their browsing habits. At first, it was just a side project. But when I launched it quietly through our website, our online sales began to grow. Then they tripled. Within 1 year, we went from scraping by to becoming a multi-million-dollar online retailer. Dad noticed. So did Tracy. But they didn't fully understand what had changed. They only knew that the money was finally coming in. I had spent 11 years behind the scenes, turning a failing store into a booming $200 million business. I built the system, handled client relationships, trained staff, and made sure the wheels never stopped turning. All Jake ever did was pop in now and then to take selfies in front of the office whiteboard. Despite everything, I didn't ask for much. I didn't care about titles or fame. I just wanted the work to speak for itself. For a while, that was enough. Until it wasn't. Every year, we held a big company anniversary celebration in downtown Austin, a fancy, over-the-top event Tracy insisted on organizing. She loved the attention, the sparkle, the red carpet feel. This year was no different. The ballroom was filled with clients, investors, employees, and local press. I arrived in a simple navy dress, still answering work emails as I stepped through the hotel doors. I wasn't expecting anything except maybe a thank you or a nod of appreciation. But what happened that night changed everything. Dad stood on stage, smiling, with Tracy and Jake by his side. "Thank you all for being here," he began, his voice booming over the speakers. "Tonight isn't just about celebrating another year of growth. It's about looking toward the future." I clapped, polite and proud. I had no idea what was coming. "I've made an important decision," he continued, his hand resting on Jake's shoulder. "From this moment forward, the new Chief Executive Officer of Monroe Tech will be Jake Rivers." My hands froze in mid-clap. I felt like the room had tilted sideways. I waited for him to correct himself, to say it was a joke. But he kept going. "Jake represents the next generation of innovation," Dad said. "And unfortunately, Layla's recent mental health struggles make it difficult for her to carry the burden of leadership." The room went quiet. My ears rang. I saw confused faces, shocked glances, even a few people looking at me with sympathy. I stood there in disbelief, the blood draining from my face. Mental health struggles? That's what he was going with. I glanced at Tracy. She was smiling like she'd just won the lottery. Jake looked smug, already soaking in the applause that slowly began to trickle in from scattered corners of the room. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't even speak. I turned around and walked out, heels clicking softly against the ballroom floor. That night, I sat in my home office surrounded by everything I had built: systems, software, patents, project files. I thought about every late night, every problem I solved, every deal I closed. And then I made a decision. If they thought they could just take everything I built and hand it to someone who had never lifted a finger, they were about to learn a lesson. A quiet one. Because I'm not loud. I'm not flashy. But I know how to build an empire. And I know how to take it back. That night, after the celebration, or betrayal, as I now think of it, I didn't sleep. I didn't even try. I sat in the dim glow of my desk lamp, staring at the monitor in front of me, everything running through my mind like a movie reel in fast forward. My fingers hovered over the keyboard as if they already knew what to do. And honestly, they did. You see, while Jake was out partying, playing CEO on Instagram, I had been quietly running a parallel company behind the scenes for the past 2 years. I called it Novamind Tech. It started as a backup plan, just something small, something mine. But over time, it grew. I hired a small team of developers, data analysts, and sales strategists, people who believed in me, not just the company name. All the core systems, the AI algorithms, automated inventory processing, the customer recommendation engine, they were never fully owned by Monroe Tech. I had structured it carefully. The licensing rights belonged to Novamind, and Monroe Tech had been using the platform under a timed agreement. That agreement, coincidentally, had expired just 3 days before the anniversary party. And no one noticed. No one read the renewal documents I had quietly placed on my father's desk the week before. He didn't sign them. He was too busy helping Tracy prepare for their grand night. It was almost too perfect. So that night, I sent out one email. Just one. It went to every major client, partner, and internal lead at Monroe Tech. It said the following. Effective immediately, all AI-powered services provided by Monroe Tech under the Novamind license will be suspended. We appreciate your partnership and will provide a new, improved platform through Novamind Tech transition teams are already in place. Welcome to the future.
Short, clear, cold. just like they treated me.
Within hours, responses started coming in. First a few, then a wave. Clients were confused but curious. Some were furious about the sudden shift, but most respected me too much to question it. They knew I was the reason they stayed with Monroe Tech in the first place. By dawn, I had 42 confirmed transitions to Novamind. Half of Monroe Tech's top-tier clients were now mine. And I hadn't even held the official meeting yet. The next morning, I arrived at the Monroe Tech headquarters early, before anyone else. I walked through the glass doors like I belonged there because I did. People glanced at me, but didn't say much. Maybe they were afraid. Maybe they just didn't know what had happened yet. At 9 a.m. sharp, I walked into the main conference room, pulled up my presentation, and waited. Jake strolled in first, wearing some ridiculous designer jacket and acting like he was born for this. Tracy followed, all smiles and fake confidence. Then came my dad, Robert Monroe, who didn't even look at me when he entered. A few board members filtered in behind them, along with department heads. Jake leaned back in his chair and said, "Layla, what are you doing here? Shouldn't you be taking some personal time?" I smiled calmly, just wrapping up some loose ends.
My dad shook his head.
"Layla, we've already discussed the future direction of the company. There's no need for..." I cut him off. "There's every need. You see, I wasn't just working for Monroe Tech these last 11 years. I was building something else, something of my own. And while you were busy handing over the company to someone with zero business knowledge, I was preparing for this exact moment." I tapped my tablet and brought the first document up on the screen. "This is the licensing agreement Monroe Tech had with Novamind Tech," I said, scanning the room. "The same AI systems that power 90% of your revenue? They're mine. You didn't renew the contract, which means as of last night, Monroe Tech is legally barred from using any of that software." The silence that followed was so thick, you could slice it with a knife. Jake laughed nervously. "That's not possible. Dad, she's bluffing, right?" My father paled. I could see it. He remembered the papers he never bothered to read. And I wasn't done. Second, I continued, switching slides. "You might want to take a look at these emails." One by one, client confirmations lit up the screen.
Dozens of them.
They've already signed transition agreements with Novamind.
Why?
Because they didn't sign contracts with Monroe Tech, they signed them with me. Personal loyalty clauses, remember? Most of these deals were negotiated directly by me. They trust me. Not Jake. Not the name Monroe Tech. Tracy looked like she had swallowed a lemon. Jake sat frozen. I walked to the head of the table and faced my father. "You threw me aside for a dropout who doesn't understand a single line of code. You insulted me in front of our entire network, claiming I wasn't mentally stable enough to lead. But you were wrong. I wasn't broken. I was building." He didn't speak. His jaw was tight. His eyes filled with regret, but it was too late. "I'm not here to ask for my job back," I said. "I'm here to take what's mine. Every client, every piece of tech, every team member who built this from the ground up, they're coming with me." I placed a document folder in front of him. As of this morning, Novamind Tech is fully operational. And Monroe Tech, without its tech infrastructure, clients, or staff, is now an empty building. No one said a word. I watched them all sit there, stunned and helpless. Jake finally stood up. "You planned this," he muttered. "You've been scheming this whole time." I met his eyes for the first time.
"No, Jake.
I've been surviving. There's a difference." I gathered my things and walked toward the door. Before I left, I turned back one last time. "Oh, and one more thing," I said softly. "Don't try to fix this. You don't have the tools." After I walked out of that boardroom, I didn't look back. There was no part of me that wanted to see their reactions, no desire to watch Jake panic or my father finally realize what he'd done. That moment wasn't for them. It was for me. Still, the hours that followed were heavier than I expected. You'd think the taste of justice would feel sweet right away, but the truth is it didn't. Not at first. It felt like grieving. Grieving for the family I thought I had, the trust one had spent years building, and the place I once called home. I went back to the Novamind office, Small, modern, tucked in the tech district of East Austin. My team was already gathered there. Most of them had worked with me silently, while still holding positions at Monroe Tech. They were the real believers. Now, they were Novamind's first full-time staff. They welcomed me with cautious smiles, not entirely sure what to expect after such a massive shift. "Are we officially launched?" my lead developer, Marcus, asked. "We're more than launched," I said, finally exhaling. "We've taken flight." That day, we began rerouting our systems, onboarding clients, and setting up the infrastructure for what would be the fastest expansion I'd ever led. The AI engine was already in place. The product catalog system, logistics automation, and customer interaction AI were already running in silent mode. All I had to do now was switch them to public access. And just like that, Novamind Tech was born. But as the press started picking up the story over the next few days, so did the drama. Articles surfaced. Headlines read things like, "Daughter dismantles family business overnight. Insiders say she engineered her exit months ago." Jake Rivers appointed CEO, then loses entire client base in less than 24 hours. The media spun it every which way. Some called me ruthless. Others called me a genius. But none of them knew the full story. Behind those headlines was a woman who spent even years sacrificing her time, energy, and health. A woman who built something out of ashes and was tossed aside like she didn't matter. They didn't see the nights I stayed at the office until 3 a.m. or the deals I negotiated in my car with a laptop balanced on my knees. They didn't see the pain I carried when my own father chose a lazy, unqualified stepson over me. And the hardest part? Even after everything, a small part of me still wanted them to say sorry. Not because I needed their approval, but because I wanted to know if they were capable of remorse. That answer came faster than expected. 3 days after the takeover, I received an email. Subject: "We need to talk." From Robert@monroetech.com. I stared at the screen for a long time before opening it. "Layla, I don't know how to begin this. I've made mistakes. Big ones.
And I see that now.
You've always been the engine behind this company, and I was too blind to acknowledge it." Jake, he wasn't ready. I was trying to give him a chance, but I did it at your expense. And for that, I'm deeply sorry. Please, let's talk. Just once.
Dad.
I didn't respond. 2 hours later, Tracy called me. I let it go to voicemail. Then she sent a voice message. "Layla, honey, things got a little out of hand. Jake didn't mean to overstep. We just wanted what was best for the family.
Can we meet?
Please." I played it once, then deleted it. They didn't understand. This wasn't just a misunderstanding. This was a betrayal I would never forget. Later that week, I got a visitor at the Novamind office.
Jake.
He looked nothing like the smug, suited man who stood on stage that night. His shirt was wrinkled, his eyes bloodshot. He didn't have his usual swagger. "Layla," he said quietly, "can I just have 5 minutes?" I crossed my arms. 5 minutes. He stepped inside. "I messed up," he said. "I shouldn't have taken that role. I knew I wasn't ready. I didn't want to humiliate you like that. I just thought maybe I could make it work, but I couldn't. I can't." I didn't say anything. "They're blaming me," he continued. "The clients are gone. The systems are down. Employees are quitting every day. Dad's not the same. And Tracy, well, she's furious, of course." I finally met his eyes. "What did you expect?" He shrugged, defeated. "I thought maybe you'd give me some advice. Help me fix it." That's when I felt it. The full weight of the irony. "You burned the house down, Jake," I said. "And now you want the architect to rebuild it for free?" He opened his mouth but said nothing. "I spent 11 years saving that company. You spent 10 minutes destroying it. That math doesn't add up to forgiveness." He nodded slowly. "I get it. I deserve that." Before he left, he turned around. "Are you really not coming back?" I gave him the only answer I had. I didn't leave. I moved forward. After that, they stopped reaching out. Maybe they realized I meant it. Maybe they knew it was over. The truth is, I didn't want revenge. I just wanted my life back. My future. My dignity. And now I had it. Novamind exploded in popularity. Word spread quickly about the shift. Clients praised the new systems. Investors lined up. My team doubled in size within a month. We signed international contracts within 6 weeks. Everything Monroe Tech used to be, we became better. I was finally the CEO of something I built. Not inherited. Not gifted. Not borrowed. And for the first time in years, I slept peacefully. But deep down, I knew the story wasn't over yet. There was still one final chapter left. A year passed. 12 full months since I walked out of that ballroom. 12 months since I watched my father give away everything I'd built to someone who didn't even know what it meant to build. And yet, those 12 months were the most transformative of my life. Novamind Tech had grown faster than I imagined. We didn't just recover, we soared. We became a top name in the AI-driven e-commerce space, not just in Austin, but across the country. The systems I had once designed to support a struggling family business were now the backbone of multi-million-dollar retail chains, boutique startups, and even global distributors. We expanded into logistics software, customer retention tools, and predictive sales engines. Every tool I had held back while working under Monroe Tech now had room to evolve. I had room to evolve. But not everything that changed was technical. Something changed in me, too. For the first time, I didn't feel like I had to prove myself to anyone. I wasn't waiting for my father's approval. I wasn't asking for space at the table. I was building my own. Of course, Monroe Tech didn't survive. Within 3 months, they lost nearly 85% of their client base. The company that once held a $200 million valuation was now drowning in debt. Suppliers pulled out. Partners backed off. Investors vanished. The press stopped covering them, not out of mercy, but because there was nothing left to cover. Jake, from what I heard, tried to step down, but by then it was too late. He'd become the face of a collapse. Tracy tried pitching a rebrand, but no one took her seriously. And my father, well, he quietly retired. Or maybe the better word is disappeared. I hadn't seen him since that last email. But one thing I hadn't told anyone, not even my team, was that I still had one unopened box from that night. The night of the anniversary celebration. It was the gift I had wrapped for my father. Back then, I had hoped to hand it to him on stage. I even imagined he might smile at me, say something kind, something proud. Instead, I left it on the table when I walked out of the ballroom. I had taken it back that night, unopened. Now, sitting alone in my new office, taller building, bigger view, better company, I finally opened it. Inside was a leather-bound photo album. On the front, in gold embossed letters, were the words, "From repair shop to revolution, our journey." It was filled with photos, old and new, of the business's transformation. The early repair shop, Dad, and me soldering parts on the workbench. My first server install. Screenshots of our early website designs. Sales graphs going up. The first $1 million month. Behind-the-scenes shots of me sleeping on the office couch after pulling all-nighters. At the very end, I had included a handwritten letter. I had written it the day before the party.
Dad.
I don't say this often, but thank you for giving me the chance to build something. It started as your dream, but you let me run with it. I hope today you feel proud, not just of what we built, but of who I've become. Love. Layla. I held the letter for a long time, reading those words again, knowing that they were written by someone who still believed he cared. I didn't regret writing it. I just knew I'd never write another like it. One morning, a few weeks later, I received a formal envelope at my office. No email, no message, just a letter, handwritten again, but this time by my dad. Layla, I've lost everything, but the thing I miss the most is you. I was wrong. I see that now. You were never unstable. You were never weak. You were the strongest one in the room. I let pride blind me. And in doing so, I lost the best leader I've ever known. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. But if you ever decide to visit, I'd like to say these words to you in person.
I'm sorry, Dad.
I read the letter twice. Then I folded it and placed it inside the back cover of the album. Maybe one day I'd visit. Maybe I wouldn't. The truth was, I no longer needed his apology. I had already healed by building something greater. My success was no longer tied to his approval. My worth didn't come from what they saw. It came from what I knew. I was the quiet one, the overlooked one, the one dismissed for being too technical, too reserved, not CEO material. But I had built an empire.
Twice.
The story spread through tech circles and business schools. I was asked to speak at events. My inbox overflowed with requests for interviews. They all wanted to know how I did it, how I kept my calm, how I rose so high from such a hard fall. And the truth? I told them this. Sometimes, the most underestimated people carry the greatest power. Not because they fight louder, but because they build smarter. And when the time comes, they don't just survive, they lead. A few months later, I received an invitation I didn't expect. Jake's former university, the one he dropped out of, had asked me to be their keynote speaker for the upcoming business graduation ceremony. The topic? Hidden strengths, the power of the undervalued leader. I accepted. I already knew the first line of my speech. My name is Layla Monroe, and this is not a story of revenge. It's a story of redemption, of building, of walking away from betrayal and towards something better. Because sometimes the best way to win is to quietly take everything they thought you couldn't and build something they'll never forget. I worked 12 to 14 hours a day, sacrificing everything to save my family from huge debts. When I fell sick and lost my jobs, they abandoned me, yet spent my hard-earned money on lavish vacations. No calls, no concern, just betrayal. So, I sent them one text. 30 minutes later, their panic flooded my phone. I laughed, watching their world crumble, just like they did to me. I never thought my life would turn out this way. If someone had told me years ago that the people I loved the most would be the ones to betray me, I would have laughed in their face. But life has a cruel way of showing you the truth when you least expect it. My name is Mia Carter, and this is my story. For as long as I can remember, I've been the responsible one in my family. The one who held everything together. The one who always put others first. I grew up in New York City, in a small apartment with my parents, Richard and Linda Carter, and my younger brother, Adrian. My parents always doted on Adrian, their golden boy. He was charming, ambitious. At least, that's what everyone thought. I never minded. I loved my brother, and I wanted him to have the best in life. When I was 22, I became a nurse. It wasn't just a job, it was my passion. Helping people, taking care of them when they were at their weakest, gave me purpose. But the salary wasn't much, and I had student loans to pay off. Still, I never hesitated when my parents told me we were struggling. They said we were in debt. Bills were piling up, the rent was overdue, and Adrian's education was expensive. My parents never asked Adrian to contribute. They said he needed to focus on his future. So, I stepped up. I worked long hours, double shifts, sometimes even 70 hours a week just to make sure my family had what they needed. Every paycheck I earned, I handed over to my mother. She promised me it was going towards the rent, the groceries, and helping Adrian build his future. I believed her. I never questioned it. Adrian was the star of the family. At 24, he was supposed to be building his own business, creating something great. I was proud of him. Whenever he spoke about his dreams, his plans to start different ventures, I listened with admiration. He always seemed busy, always talking about big deals and important people. I was happy for him. But there were little things that never quite made sense. Sometimes, I'd overhear him talking on the phone, laughing about parties, spending money like it was nothing. He always had the latest gadgets, wore designer clothes, went on trips with his friends. I asked myself, if we're struggling, where is he getting all this money? I brushed it off. Maybe he had investors, maybe his business was taking off. I didn't want to doubt him. After all, I was just a nurse. I didn't understand business. Then one day, I lost my job. It was sudden. Budget cuts. I remember sitting in my supervisor's office, staring at the letter in my hands. My heart was pounding. My job wasn't just a paycheck, it was my identity, my security. And just like that, it was gone. I came home that night, exhausted, defeated. My mother was in the kitchen, cooking like nothing had changed. My father was watching TV. Adrian was out as usual. I sat down, staring at my hands, and finally, for the first time in years, I asked for help. "Mom," I said quietly, "I lost my job today." She turned, frowning. "Oh, Mia, I'm so sorry. Are you okay?" I wasn't. "I don't know," I admitted. I need some time to figure things out. And I might need help with the bills for a while." Her expression changed. Just slightly. A flicker of something. Hesitation? Guilt? I wasn't sure. "Well," she said, avoiding my eyes, "you know things are tight right now." I blinked. "Tight?" I echoed. "But I've been helping. I thought things were getting better." She sighed, turning back to the stove. "It's complicated, Mia." That was it. That was all she said. That night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. A terrible thought crept into my mind. What if they had been lying to me? I tried to shake it off, but the more I thought about it, the more the pieces didn't add up. If we were drowning in debt, why did Adrian have the newest phone? Why did he travel so much? Why did my parents never seem stressed about money, except when I asked? I decided I needed answers. The next day, while everyone was out, I went through the household bills. My hands trembled as I opened them. Paid in full. No overdue notices, no debts. The rent? Up to date. Utilities? No issues. I felt sick. I searched for bank statements. What I found made my stomach turn. Transactions, thousands of dollars spent on luxury items, vacations, clubs. Adrian's name was all over them. My hard-earned money was being wasted, and my parents had known all along. I stood there, clutching the papers, my vision blurring with anger. My family, the people I trusted the most, had betrayed me, and they thought I'd never find out. But they were wrong. I sat there, gripping the bank statements, my hands shaking with anger. The truth was right in front of me, but I still couldn't believe it. Years of sacrifice, of working endless shifts, of skipping meals to make sure my family had enough. And for what? So Adrian could throw away my money on parties and vacations? So my parents could cover for him while I lived in the dark? I wanted to scream. I wanted to tear up every single piece of paper in my hands, but I didn't. I just sat there, feeling my world collapse around me. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, waiting for them to come home. I heard the door open around midnight, Adrian's laughter filling the apartment. He was probably drunk. My mother greeted him like he was a king returning home, her voice soft and warm. I could hear my father grumbling about something, probably asking him about his latest business. I got up, walked to the living room, and stood there. They all turned to look at me. My mother smiled, but it faded when she saw my expression. "What's wrong, Mia?" she asked. I held up the bank statements. "You tell me." The room went silent. Adrian glanced at the papers in my hand, then smirked. He actually smirked, like none of this mattered. "Where did you find those?" my father asked, his voice tense. "I looked," I said, my voice shaking. "Because I lost my job, and when I asked for help, you acted like we had nothing. But guess what? We have plenty. Or, at least Adrian does." I turned to him. "You've been using my money, haven't you?" Adrian shrugged, like I had just accused him of borrowing a pair of socks. "Relax, Mia. You make it sound worse than it is." I stared at him, unable to believe what I was hearing. "Worse than it is? I've been killing myself working while you—" I threw the papers at him. "Have been living off me like a damn parasite." "Watch your tone," my father snapped. "My tone? After everything. That's what he cared about?" "You knew," I whispered, my voice raw. I turned to my mother, the person I trusted the most. "You let this happen. You let me believe we were struggling." She sighed like this was just an inconvenience. "Mia, you don't understand." "Then make me understand," I shouted.
Why?
"Why did you lie to me?" My mother hesitated, then said, "Adrian needed help. He was building something important. He just needed time." Time. I laughed bitterly. Time for what? To waste my money? To play businessman while I worked myself to death. I pointed at Adrian. He wasn't building anything. He was partying, traveling, buying expensive junk. My father crossed his arms. He's young. He deserves to enjoy life. I felt something in me snap. And I don't. My voice was barely above a whisper. I've spent my entire life giving. When was I supposed to enjoy anything? No one answered. I looked at Adrian again. He wasn't even ashamed. He was scrolling through his phone like he couldn't care less. Like this whole conversation was boring him. Something inside me hardened.
Fine, I said.
You don't care? Then neither do I. I walked away, locking myself in my room. I didn't cry. I didn't break down. Instead, I planned. The next morning, I didn't go job hunting. I didn't do my usual routine of helping around the house.
No.
I sat down with my laptop and started gathering every piece of evidence I could find. I accessed Adrian's emails, his so-called business transactions. It was worse than I thought. Fake investments, stolen money, tax fraud. He wasn't just wasting money, he was committing crimes. And my parents? They were covering for him. My hands trembled as I compiled everything into a file. It took hours, but by the time I was done, I had enough proof to bury him. That night, I sat at the dinner table, calm, collected. They thought I had moved on. They thought I was done fighting. They were wrong. Adrian walked in late again, reeking of alcohol. My parents barely reacted. They were used to it. I cleared my throat. Adrian. He looked up, raising an eyebrow. What now? I slid my phone across the table. He picked it up and froze. I saw the color drain from his face as he scrolled through the files I had gathered. Bank records. Fraudulent transactions. Evidence of stolen money. What the hell is this? He muttered. I leaned forward, my voice steady. It's your future. Or, more accurately, the end of it. His eyes snapped to mine. Mia, you don't know what you're doing. Oh, I do, I said. I know exactly what I'm doing. My mother looked panicked. Mia, please. Don't. I cut her off. Don't beg. You had your chance to make this right. You all did. I stood up, grabbing my jacket. Tomorrow, I go to the authorities. Adrian shot up from his seat. You wouldn't dare. I stared at him, dead in the eyes. Watch me. And then I walked out the door, leaving them sitting there in stunned silence. They had no idea what was coming next. The moment I walked out of that house, I knew there was no turning back. I had spent years breaking my back for a family that saw me as nothing more than a source of income, and now they were going to face the consequences of their betrayal. I didn't sleep that night. My mind was racing with everything I had uncovered. The fraud, the fake businesses, the money Adrian had stolen, not just from me, but from other people too. Investors, friends, even business associates who had trusted him. I had it all in my hands, and I knew exactly what I had to do. The next morning, I went straight to the authorities. I sat across from an officer in a small, cold room, my hands gripping a flash drive that contained every dirty secret Adrian had tried to hide. My voice didn't shake. My hands didn't tremble. I told them everything, how I had been lied to, how my money had been stolen, how my brother had used fraudulent businesses to scam people out of thousands. The officer listened carefully, occasionally taking notes. When I was finished, he leaned back in his chair and exhaled. This is serious, Miss Carter. If everything here checks out, your brother is looking at major legal trouble. I know, I said simply. He studied me for a moment. And you're sure about this? This will ruin him. I met his gaze without hesitation. He ruined me first. They took the evidence, and I knew it was only a matter of time before everything fell apart for my family. But I wasn't done yet. I wanted them to know exactly what was coming. I went back home that evening, my heart pounding as I stepped through the door. My mother and father were sitting in the living room, whispering. The moment they saw me, they stopped. My father stood up. Where have you been? I dropped my bag onto the table. You'll find out soon enough. Adrian walked in from his room, rubbing his eyes like he had just woken up. "Oh, look who's back," he said with a smirk. But when he saw my expression, the smirk disappeared. "What did you do?" I crossed my arms. "I went to the police." Silence. My mother gasped, covering her mouth with her hands. My father's face turned red. Adrian took a step forward, his eyes darkening. "Tell me you're joking." "I'm not," I said. "They have everything now. The fake companies, the stolen money, the fraud." I tilted my head. "You should probably start thinking about what you'll say in court." Adrian lunged at me so fast, I barely had time to react. He grabbed my arm, his grip tight. "You just ruined everything," he hissed. "Get your hands off me," I said, my voice calm but firm. My mother rushed forward, pulling him back. "Adrian, stop," she cried. He let go, his face twisted in rage. "You just signed my death sentence, Mia." "No," I said. "You did that to yourself." My father sat down, his hands covering his face. "You just had to ruin the family, didn't you?" he muttered. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Ruin the family?" I repeated. "What family? The one that used me? The one that watched me suffer while Adrian lived like a king? That family?" My mother started crying. "Mia, we were just trying to help him." "No," I cut her off. "You weren't trying to help him. You were enabling him. You knew exactly what he was doing, and you let it happen. You let me suffer for his mistakes. And now, you're going to suffer the consequences." Adrian grabbed his phone and started pacing. "I can fix this," he muttered. "I just need time." "You don't have time," I said. "The police are already looking into you. Your accounts? They're frozen. The fake businesses? Under investigation." I took a step forward, staring him in the eye. "You have nothing left." His hands tightened into fists, his breath coming fast and shallow. I saw the panic in his eyes. He had always been confident, always smug, but now, for the first time, he was afraid. "Good." My mother sobbed into her hands. My father just sat there, silent, like he had already given up. I took a deep breath and picked at my bag. "I'm done," I said. "I'm done with this family, with all of you." My mother looked up, tears streaking her face. "Mia, please." I shook my head.
"No."
"You made your choice years ago, and I'm making mine now." Adrian's breathing grew erratic. He clenched his jaw. "You think you're better than us?" he spat. "You think the world owes you something because you played the victim?" I held his gaze.
"No."
"But I don't owe you anything anymore." A muscle in his jaw twitched. "You'll regret this," he growled. I didn't even flinch. "We'll see." And then I walked out, leaving them behind. The moment the door closed behind me, I felt free. The weight I had been carrying for years had finally lifted. I didn't belong to them anymore. They could no longer control me. I knew what would happen next. The investigation would dig deeper. Adrian's empire of lies would crumble. My parents, who had once stood by his side, would have nothing left. I should have felt guilty. Maybe a part of me did, deep down. But I pushed that thought away. Because in the end, they had done this to themselves. I didn't look back when I left that house. I didn't need to. I already knew what I had done, and I knew exactly what was coming next. I had spent years being their puppet, and now, finally, I had cut the strings. They just hadn't realized yet that the fall was going to hurt them more than it ever hurt me. The next few days were a blur. I moved into a small rented apartment on the other side of the city. Nothing fancy, but it was mine. No family breathing down my neck. No weight of guilt or obligation. For the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe. No more working double shifts to support people who never cared about me. No more waiting for their approval. I was free. And then the phone calls started. First, it was my mother. "Mia, please," she sobbed into the phone. "You have to fix this." The police. I hung up. Then my father tried. "I hope you're happy," he said, his voice cold. "You destroyed your own family." I didn't reply. Adrian didn't call. He knew there was nothing he could say that would change my mind. But I knew he wasn't sitting back quietly. He was trying to find a way out. He always did. He had spent his entire life talking his way out of trouble, using my parents as his shield, letting them clean up his mess. But not this time. A week later, the news broke. Adrian Carter, arrested for financial fraud. The headline was everywhere. His name, his face, his shame, plastered across news articles and social media. His businesses were officially declared fraudulent, and the people he had scammed came forward one by one. Bank accounts? Frozen. Credit cards?
Shut down.
The life he had built on lies and stolen money collapsed overnight. The police had gathered more evidence than even I had imagined. Adrian had not only been stealing money but also forging documents, fabricating investments, and even committing tax fraud. The authorities had been watching him long before I came forward. My report? It was the final push they needed. And my parents? They weren't arrested, but they weren't innocent either. The authorities questioned them for days, digging into their involvement. How much did they know? How long had they covered for him? They weren't charged, but they lost everything in the process. Their home?
Gone.
The bank seized their assets due to unpaid debts linked to Adrian. Their reputation? Ruined. Their friends? Disappeared. No one wanted to be associated with them anymore. I watched it all unfold from a distance, without an ounce of guilt. One evening, weeks after Adrian's arrest, my mother showed up at my door. I knew she would. I opened it, but I didn't invite her in. She looked different. Older. Weaker. Like the weight of everything had finally settled on her shoulders. Her eyes were red, and for the first time in my life, she looked truly broken. "Mia," she whispered. "I don't know what to do." I didn't answer. I just stood there, staring at her. She took a shaky breath. "I know we made mistakes. I know we hurt you, but we're still your family." I felt something tighten in my chest, but I refused to let it show. "No," I said quietly. "You were my family, but the moment you chose Adrian over me, when you let me suffer so he could thrive, you stopped being that." Tears slipped down her face. "We didn't mean to hurt you." I shook my head. "You did. You just didn't care until it backfired." She reached for my hand, but I stepped back. "Please," she whispered. "I don't have anyone left." I took a deep breath, then said the words I had been holding in for years. "Neither did I." And then I closed the door. She didn't knock again. That was the last time I saw my mother. The days turned into weeks. The weeks turned into months. I rebuilt my life, piece by piece. I got a new job at a different hospital. I made new friends. Even started saving money for myself, something I had never been able to do before. It felt strange at first, not having to hand over every paycheck, not feeling guilty for spending on myself. I bought a new phone, not the cheapest one, not the most expensive one, just something that was mine, without a single trace of Adrian's influence. I bought clothes that I actually liked, instead of wearing the same worn-out scrubs and old jackets, because I was saving money for the family. I went to a restaurant alone for the first time in my life, sat by the window, and enjoyed a meal that I paid for without guilt. And one day, as I stood in my little apartment, looking around at the life I had built, I realized something. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was finally living. For so long, I had waited for my family to see me, to value me, to love me the way I had loved them. But they never did. And maybe, just maybe, I was never meant to wait for their approval. Maybe I was always meant to walk away. My family had underestimated me for years. They thought I was weak. They thought I would always take care of them, always sacrifice myself for their happiness. But in the end, it wasn't me who fell apart. It was them. And I had never felt stronger.